Directing traffic, gonna go deep, has a man deep, it is caught for the touchdown, David!
What do you do? Tax leverage. If he's outside leverage, he doesn't want you to beat him outside. So stem towards him, hold him outside, stab outside. Drive face, full cell vertical, get into the blind spot, and he absolutely burns him. Corner is lost. He literally has no idea where Wilson is.
Long, fast, how he approaches the game, how dedicated he is to football. He's ridiculously good, man. You have to be ecstatic.
This is actual film. This is actual football talk. It's a football show. We're supposed to talk football, not storylines.
And you are watching / listening to another edition of Blewett Blitz, where we're going to talk storylines and not actual film on these live streams.
Exactly what we're gonna do.
Joined by one Mr. Michael Nania. Nania, what's up, man?
I'm doing good. Like I just told you before we started recording, I think right now the main thing is that I'm just trying to manage the stress that accompanies you 24/7 when your team is in the middle of a playoff race. So that's the main thing in life right now.
We're not allowed to talk the playoffs, though, according to BYU fan, which we will. Nani, you just did an article where we're talking about you're talking about a bunch of different scenarios, which we'll go over in a little bit. And it seems to me that just kind of playing over all the scenarios in my head and then checking out the article as well, it's the Jets kind of have to win that Week 18 game in Miami. But we'll go over that in a little bit. First, we'll say hello to some people in the chat. BYU fan, even though we don't want to talk playoffs, we still are. But what is up? Appreciate you being here. Rob D, if the Jets want to prove they're a playoff team, next two games are a must. And I think actually in your scenarios, it's pretty much win two and then win in Miami is one of the most likely scenarios, I would say, in terms of them losing to one of the NFC teams and then beating Miami in the last week. But again, we'll discuss that in a little bit. Braden saying, I think we need extra deep protection for this game, don't we? And then Rob D responds, Bam Knight runs so violently, he would probably keep running if the kneecaps are bitten off, which he's been impressive as well. Christian, what's up? Paul says, you guys do great work. Appreciate you both. Appreciate you being here, Paul. Let's see. Rise of the New York Jets. Hey, regardless if we make the playoffs, this was a fun year. Yeah, it was, Michael. But at the same point, we adjust our expectations, right? Like you're 5-2 at a certain point, and since we've been 5-2, we are now we went 2-4 since that point, and then post bye we're 1-3. So I'm not gonna lie, to me, if they don't make the playoffs, it's a disappointing year for how we started off. Now, if they win 10 wins and because of tiebreakers they miss out, I'm more understandable. But if they only win 9 games, we're disappointed at this point, right?
No, yeah, I agree. And that's something I know you said on your streams quite a few times this year that, the expectations have changed because, before the year, if the Jets win 8-9 games, I think that's in line with kind of what you expected. And they're doing it in a way where you have all these young players playing well and stuff. So there are going to be positives, even if they bottom out here. But, the expectations have changed. When you start 5-2, they proved that they're a different team than what we expected them to be. So it's clear looking at this team that they are a playoff talent team. You look at where they rank in pretty much anything, whether it's, their point differential or their defensive ranks, their DVOA, whatever it is. This is a top 10 team in the league right now. So they should be in the playoffs, and it would be disappointing if they can't, finish through this stretch and get there. But at the same time, I do understand the sentiment that, we've had some fun this year. Past few years, at this point, we've long been already talking about the offseason. You get 2 or 3 games you actually care about, and those are all blowouts. And then it's evaluation after that. So I do kind of understand, it's been fun, but this is a team that should be in the playoffs.
I think 2-3 games might be a stretch, really. You're looking at the Adam Gase years, we didn't really care about anything at that point, minus losing games. And then even like last year, the second game was the New England game where they got absolutely blown out. And then midway through the Broncos game, we lost what was it, 27-0 or wherever the hell that score was in that game. So maybe 3 games we cared. Even though obviously we care about a lot of things, but it's just interesting to see where the Jets are going to go post this year, which we're not going to really get into too much now. But do they re-sign Quincy? Do they re-sign Quan? Who are their starting safeties next year? Who is their starting offensive line? You have 2 guys who are pretty much locks to be here. Past that, we have no idea what's going to go on with them. So it's a fun and exciting team. But in the NFL nowadays, with injuries, with a bunch of different things, you have to kind of go for it when you're close to it because you never know what can happen next year. The Jets have been obviously brutally injured at tackle on the offensive line, but past that, they haven't been really injured. And knock on wood here, But what happens? We start the next year and Quinnen goes down for the year, and they're like, oh shit, and then Sauce goes down. Like that stuff can happen. So when it's right there, you have to obviously make strides in the playoffs. I don't think anybody's going to think that's a crazy take or anything like that. It's almost so obvious. I shouldn't even say it, but it's right out in front of them, and they need to grab it. And those two Pats games and the Vikings game are going to hurt them, and it hurts that the Vikings game felt like a team loss where, there was obviously portions of the team that lost those Patriots games too, JFM, the punt return team, but a large portion of those losses were on Zach Wilson against the Patriots. So you feel like if Mike White were to play those games, we probably win at least one of them. I don't think that's crazy to say. Like, listen, they only put up 3 points versus the Pats, but I know the Zach Wilson fans are going to get mad at me for saying that, but at the end of the day, we put up 4 yards in the second half. Like, I think Mike White can put up 4 yards. Oh, we didn't score this game. Blah, blah. I get it. But with that all being said, before we get into the rest of the chat, let's go through, since we're already kind of talking about it. You wrote that article about pretty much if they won and lost every single one of their games coming up. Is it kind of true that it's win at least 2 games before Miami, hope Miami loses to the Buffalo Bills, so then we leap them hopefully this week, and then that week 18 game is basically going to be a playoff game for the Jets if they can kind of win at least 2 of the next 3.
Yeah, no, and like when you break it down, it's like that week 18 Miami game is so essential, regardless of not regardless, because obviously you want to get all 3 of these games, but even if you win the next 3, if they lose in Miami, it gets tough because basically what you're trying to do here is get past 2 of the 3 teams you're competing against, Miami, Chargers, and the Patriots. And if you lose to Miami in that Week 18 game, even if you win the first 3, Miami's ahead of you. So then you're just counting on, at that point, that at least one of the Chargers or the Patriots will not catch up to you at 10-7, which is a 50-50 kind of thing. The Chargers have a soft schedule, and if they tie the Jets, most likely they're going to win that tiebreaker with the conference record. Unless, a very specific set of games go the Jets' way. So it just comes down, if you don't win that game, you got to hope the Pats and the Chargers can't catch up to you. So that one's really important. And, like you laid out before, I think if the Jets are going to go 3-1 to finish here, you have to lose the Seattle game instead of the Miami game. Because, and like, you don't want to pick and choose games, but in terms of this, like, just win them all. Like, obviously that's the goal. Like, if you're a player, you don't care about this at all. This is just us speculating and all that. But just in terms of, the fact that you beat Miami, you're likely passing them, and you add to your conference record to beat the Chargers if you tie them, that game is going to be essential. So it's likely going to be a win and end game for the Jets and Dolphins. But first things first, you obviously have to put yourself in a position to actually do that and win some of these first 3 games. But when you look at the odds and everything, it very much hinges in that last game.
Yeah, and obviously again it was those Pats games that really hurt them in terms of the conference record, divisional record, and all of that. And it is what it is. But 7-6 after 5-2 is not the most ideal scenario. But hopefully they could win these next 2 games. And then we're talking about hopefully a win in Miami. They're a team who was looked at as a team who's clearly above the Jets, but in recent weeks they've been struggling. They had, and it's obviously we would love for the game to be in New Jersey coming up, but they're going to Buffalo. They had the bench warmers or the heaters on for the Chargers weather, which was like 55 degrees at game time. They're going to Buffalo in the snow this week. So hopefully the Buffalo Bills can pull that win out. And obviously the Chargers, it's annoying because we looked at their schedule and we're looking at this week and they played, who they play this week, who they're not supposed to lose to, but it was a game that they should have. Yeah, Miami. So we're actually rooting for Miami, and the one time we've done that in our entire lives as Jets fans, they let us down, of course, and the Chargers lose that game or win that game. So we're in a tough spot with the Chargers because the Chargers have games against the Colts and the Broncos. And I know the Broncos just put up like 30-something points, and maybe their offense is on the mend now, even though I severely doubt that. But you're looking at some trash teams who have to beat the Chargers, and you're hoping the Chargers lose at least 2 more games. I know their next game is up against the Titans. But the Titans are they're not really a great team. Like, they're the best team, kind of. So let's hope that they can win. And I think there's a game tonight that is important. No, there's not a game tonight that's important for the Jets. It's just a game tonight. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's, again, 10 wins and you don't get in. It sucks. 7 teams get in, you win 10 again, just like 2015. You don't get in for the second time. That would be ridiculous if that happens. But with that being said, the Jets had control of their own destiny at a certain point, and you can't lose 2 games versus the Pats, who are not as good as you, and you can't lose a game against the Vikings where you go 1-6 in the red zone. Like at the end of the day, it was just an ugly game from the defense at certain points was really, really bad. The play calling was really bad in the red zone, and people kind of talk about that game in terms of the play calling, and they reference the last 3 or 4 plays of the game. But really, for me, and I went over on that stream and went over actually I didn't do the film review for that week, but I went over it in the stream. Like that was more the play calling when they got into the red zone than just that specific time. Like when they got into it early in the third quarter, late in the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter, it was just bad in terms of like end arounds and receiver passes to other receivers and fake screens one way to a screen the other way and a fake pump screen to a double seam. It's like, what are we trying to do here? Like he was outsmarting himself, but nonetheless, let's get back to the chat. We'll talk about the playoffs in a little bit. BC, appreciate you. Marvin Guns is in the car listening or watching. Slightly dangerous, Marvin. Hopefully you're not in New Jersey where it's like it's pissing cats and dogs out there. So raining cats and dogs out there. So which Nania, you could tell, nice sunlight right there. So he's in Carolina, I'm assuming right now, not in New Jersey.
Not sunlight, it's my lamp, but
it looks like natural
it's
sunlight.
It's a weird setup I have here. I guess it kind of gives off that vibe though.
And Better Call Saul, what's up? John Hassel, what's up? Ryan Rivera said Will Parks was cut. So he was cut. I don't know exactly what the roster maneuvering they're trying to do, Nani. I don't know if that's come out or not, but apparently they're trying to bring him to the practice squad. I don't know if you've heard anything farther about who they're bringing up, though.
Yeah, no, I don't think we know what's going on with that yet. It's definitely an interesting one, kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah, now he's a fan favorite. Do you think that this is something that could be in a result of Tony Adams coming in last week? And he got beat on third down. It was by a receiver. I don't remember exactly what receiver it was, but he got beat by a receiver as a safety. It's a hard position to be put in. But then he also had the really nice PD, or I don't know if it was actually labeled a PD on Knox or a drop by Knox. But either way, he played the ball really, really well. Do you think this is a result of Tony Adams playing well, that they had the freedom to maneuver the roster a little bit and cut Parks?
I think it could be that, and also I'm pretty sure I remember, because Parks played a little bit on defense the past couple games. I think I remember him, maybe missing a tackle or two. So it could be, I guess, maybe like defensive depth. The next few games more related to that, because Parks is more of a special teams guy than actual defense, and Adams has shown some potential on defense between the preseason and then now with the short appearance in the Bills game. So I guess it could be related to that, but there has to be some sort of roster move, someone they're adding with this, Parks addition, or Parks subtraction. So I'm not really sure what that is yet. So I don't know. It's interesting because he is a key special teams guy, good locker room guy, all that stuff. So I wonder what they're doing with it.
Yeah, he's a guy, like, yes, good on special teams, good locker room guy, but in terms of his play on the field, like he's a fan favorite, but it's not like we should be losing sleep about Will Parks being off the roster. Yeah. It is what it is. Snowball, what's up, man? Sneakers of Boots says, what up? What's up, Joe and Nania? I know it's Lions week, but the Jags game is predicting to have 3 to 6 inches of snow as of now.
Oh, wow.
I did not know it was going to. So I actually heard it was going to snow, and then I looked it up, and I saw it was like 30% chance of. Well, I know the 30% chance thing isn't really of how much snow it is. It's 30% of that area is going to snow. I didn't know that for like years of my life. So you can have 30% and still have a lot of snow in a certain area, but. I would love that because I'm going to the Jaguars game. I don't think I've ever been to a snow game minus the Buffalo Week 15 game, or not Week 15 game, 2015 game where they lost that last week to get into the playoffs. So past that, I haven't been to a snow game at MetLife. So I would love if it snowed. And at the end of the day, having that,
looking at it right now, it is projected right now. That'll be interesting. Playing against a team from the South, like Miami today on Saturday. So
exactly. Yeah. And how are they? I don't know if you, I don't want to put you necessarily on the spot here. And if I am, whatever it is, what it is, but are the Lions, the Jaguars struggle on defense in general, but they struggle in run defense as well too, right? So like you're going to assume that's going to be a game where the quarterbacks throw 20, 25 passes and try to run a lot. And I don't think they're not a great defense in general, but we're going to have to really look into their team in general in the run game, both offensively and defensively for that game. But like you said, team from Miami or a team from Jacksonville, obviously in Florida, coming to MetLife to the Northeast and playing in 3 to 6 inches of snow would be interesting. I'm rooting for it. I think that actually gives the Jets an advantage. So.
Yeah, Jags have, and that's really a theme with all 4 of these teams at the end of the schedule here. They are all offense-leaning teams, between Detroit, Jacksonville, Seattle, and Miami. All 4 of these teams are good offensive teams, especially, Jacksonville, Detroit, the way they've improved recently. But none of these teams are good defensively. And I do think that does kind of lean in a positive way for the Jets, because I feel like, the defense has shown it could shut down pretty much any offense, especially with these 2 Bills games where Josh Allen looked as human as he's looked all season in those 2 games. So, the defense has proven it'll step up, pending Quinn Williams' health, which is a very stressful thing right now.
Yeah.
But that's a huge factor. But, even regardless, I think it's a defense that should be able to step up against these offenses. But the Jets' offense, I think, has had more, a higher variance than the defense. And it's, they've played well against worse defenses like Chicago. Like even Minnesota, they didn't put the points up. Obviously, that's terrible, but they moved the ball very well. Cleveland, they put up points. So, worse defenses, they've put points up. But so I think against some of these teams, maybe it lends better for the Jets than if they're playing a lot of defense first teams. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I said that. I think I forget. I think I said that going to the Vikings game. Like, I'd rather the Jets play a very good offensive team with a bad defense than a really good defensive team with a bad offense, just because the defense is obviously our bigger strength. So I'd rather have our bigger strength match up against their bigger strength. And then I think our offense against bad defensive teams, like this offense has the potential, or at times is at least average. Now, do they have to produce in the red zone? Yes. Yeah. Do they have to start getting false starts? Yes. Like, do they have to have some improved play calling? 100%. But I think the offense could take advantage of some bad defenses like they did against the Chicago Bears. And the Vikings, they did for the most part. They outgained them by a little bit over 200 yards, right? But they just could not finish in the red zone. And obviously, the Jets are one of the worst teams in the red zone this entire season, I believe. I don't like saying that stuff when I have Nania sitting right here, but I think they're in the bottom 10 at least in terms of the red zone efficiency. So they need to,
they need to be 26 in the red zone, so not ideal.
Need to be more consistent there, and hopefully versus these worst teams they are. And the Vikings chance, there was the Vikings game, there were definitely opportunities, but I'm blaming it more on play calling than I am actual players, minus a player or two. Like, there's frustrating parts. That Vikings game, I broke it down. Even this game, like little things, like and we'll give Mike White his credit. I know you graded him. Nani does the articles where he breaks down exactly how he grades quarterbacks. And you put up the article, and this week you graded them, I think, in like I don't know, I can't give you like a B plus area. Like, he was good in this game to you.
Yeah. Say B plus range.
Yeah, B plus range. And that, like, there's little things like that one throw to Elijah Moore, like put it to his outside shoulder so he can continue to get yak instead of having to turn in and slow down for the ball, and then he doesn't get tackled there at 3rd and 1. And then we never throw to Barrios on 3rd and 1, which I'll criticize Mike Lafleur for. Like, there's some, and well, I guess we can get into this now, but like there's some Lafleur problems from this game to me as well, and I don't necessarily always know the flexibility that one Mike White has in terms of which side of the field he's going to read at first. But in general, like, you have concepts where Uzama and Mims are your first read, which I think should never happen. Like, Mims has been brutal this year, both in terms of catching the ball, and his route running is basically, okay, let me just get to my break point, collide him with the guy, and then hopefully I'll get open. And then you have Uzama running a curl on that play when you have Elijah Moore and Wilson to the other side, and both of them get at least some separation. Wilson gets a ton of separation, and then in the I don't know if it was in the red zone. I don't know if you watched it, but I broke down a play where, like, they have and people will blame Conklin for blocking and poor blocking, and they both Uzama and Conklin did not have their best games blocking in this game, to say the least, at least to my eye. But you have a play where they run play action and a rollout to the left, and you have Conklin coming across the formation to block to where White is going, and he's never going to have leverage on the side that he's rolling out to. So how does that make sense? Like, so there's some schematic things I don't like from Lafleur either. What has been your general observations about Lafleur and how much blame you put on him for some of the offensive deficiencies?
Yeah, I agree. I think these last 2 games he deserves a lot of blame for it. And generally, I'm a more pro Lafleur kind of guy, because I think when before Mike White coming in, I think there was a lot of offense that Lafleur had schemed up that wasn't getting capitalized on because Zach Wilson just wasn't hitting it, especially those 2 Patriots games. I feel like more so the first one, though. But there were plenty of plays being left on the field, and then there was a lot of offense being created, that was schemed up. But these last couple of games, I feel like the only offense the Jets could generate, even in Minnesota where they had 486 yards, It feels like the only way they can move it is Mike White makes an amazing throw, Garrett Wilson gets yak or runs an amazing route. Like, it feels like individual talent is kind of carrying them the past couple games, and there isn't as much of that. Like the Bears game, that was a great Lafleur game. There was plenty of stuff schemed up, just right there for the taking for Mike White, for the running game. It seemed like he was just in a rhythm. But these last couple games, they're like, where are the easy throws? It feels like all Mike White can do is, out routes to the opposite hash, or, just these difficult throws are the only ways that the Jets are moving the ball. Just all that easy stuff that made the Bengals game look great last year, the Bears game this year hasn't really been there. So I feel like Lafleur last couple games, not as on point as he usually is.
Yeah, like there's just little things like, and football is definitely more complex than a lot of people like than all of us realize. Like, let's be realistic. But there are certain things that you just that are also simple as well. Like, you're not going to run a bootleg to a side where you have a tight end trying to kick out, a defensive end here. So you're betting on a defensive end crashing hard inside, so Conklin can get outside versus inside leverage. Like, it's never going to work. You're not going to roll out to the side with Conklin coming across the formation to block this guy, because he's never going to have, that outside leverage on him. So, like, it just doesn't make little things that don't make sense. And on this play, I'll break it down farther in the actual review. But like, you want to see, White get rid of the ball and maybe dump it off to Barrios or to get rid of it. But how does this make sense? Like, it just doesn't make a ton of sense there. So you put Conklin in a really shitty position. You put Mike White in a shitty position. That's a very low percentage type of play there. So there's definitely things that are frustrating me about Lafleur. And again, we went over a lot of them last week. And, again, the Barrios play in the red zone. Why is Barrios the receiver who's isolated to he's not isolated to the field side, but he has the highest percent chance that he's going to win that route, or be not win that route because he's not a great receiver, but he's put in the most advantageous spot to win a route. That's how I should phrase that. Why is it not Garrett Wilson? Why is it not Elijah Moore? And people will say that in general and just say it, but like not really know. Okay, well, why wasn't it Elijah Moore or Wilson? Like, what exactly was the concept? What do you like about the concepts? And usually people can answer that stuff, but on that play, he has the most space on a slant out of any other player on the team. Why is it him? And then they throw the ball to him. And Barrios, like, people say, oh, it was a tough catch. Yeah, it was a tough catch, but he also let the ball literally hit him in the face. Like, even if it was a tough catch and he just put his hands up and he tried to catch it with his hands, it's a lot better than you literally trying to hope that it gets stuck in your face mask and that's how you catch the ball. Like, what are we trying to do here? And then with that route from Barrios in the red zone as well, there's little things you want to do on 3rd and 1. When you run a slant, you don't want to take the slant high, because you take the slant high, you're letting the outside defender, get underneath of the route and potentially deflect it, and you're running that route high right into safety help. So when he runs that route, he needs to flatten it out a yard or two past the sticks, so making an easier throw for Mike White. He doesn't do that either. So like, why is it Barrios in that scenario? Why is Barrios getting targeted in the Vikings game? Like, and at the end of the game too, I know it frustrated you as well, Michael. You have a play where Barrios is in the slot, and I get you have to play him a little bit more this game because Corey Davis is out. But Mike White gets through his reads, gets to Barrios eventually, and he throws the ball to Barrios. And instead of attacking the ball like you're taught to do when you're 10 years old, he fades away from the ball and tries to catch it with his body. Like, so Barrios has to be eliminated from the game plan at this point, minus like some jet sweeps and end rounds. But I've been really frustrated with the scheming around Barrios and Barrios in general.
Yeah, I agree. I think at this point, and it might seem like a reaction to the past 2 games, but it's really not, because the past 2 games have just kind of brought more attention to the lack of production that he's had throughout the entire season. Because I mean, you take out the 2 rushing touchdowns he had against Green Bay and Miami. What else has he done other than that? Pretty much nothing. And, compared to your receivers across the league, he's one of the worst when it comes to pretty much anything, whether it's his yards per route run or his yards per reception on screens. Even that's bad, which is what he's supposed to be good at. So he really hasn't done anything this year. And then now, you have injuries and you're in this playoff run and he's getting thrown at some of these spots. So, if he has to be out there, he has to be out there because guys are hurt. But there are times where you can control it and make, like you mentioned, with him being the isolated player on a key red zone play, like there are things like that you can avoid and don't need to happen. So I think they need to do the best they can to phase him out and try to shift some of that work over to Garrett Wilson, to Elijah Moore, to Corey Davis when he is healthy. Hopefully he's out there this week because there's just too much Barrios. It's not warranted at this point.
Yeah, and I see Hawk in the chat, and I'm always like, I always have it up on my computer, then on my YouTube as well. And I see Hawk saying that one route was improvised by Barrios at the end of the Vikings game, which I completely understand. But I don't want him in that scenario in general. Like, I don't really want Barrios in the red zone package. So for that to even be him, I think he's sort of a whip there. They said, and then he adjusted on the fly, but. And I don't know why it's been doing my thing's been lagging out a little bit, but this is not how you want to tackle football. And some of the stuff that came out this week was like, or in the last couple of weeks, that Barrios has always been reliable, all this stuff. When was Barrios reliable as a pass catcher, Nania? Because I never, even with Donald, I remember him catching or dropping wide open balls pretty consistently. So he's never been a reliable guy. He's not the best route runner. And like, I like him in general. Like, I like his personality. But the thing is, when you have a team who, we have some studs on it, and we're going to have some guys who have to get paid. We don't have a ton of cap space this year. Like, is Barrios, and I think his contract's like right around like $7-8 million next year. I think they saved $5 and $2 dead with him getting released. But is he worth $5 million for what he does on punt returns and kick returns, and then what he does on the offense in terms of gadget plays? Is it a $5 million difference between how good he is and how good Elijah Moore is? Like, I would argue that he's better than Elijah Moore in those situations, but he's not $3, $4, $5 million better than Elijah Moore. Like, I'd rather save that money and give that to Quincy, give that to Quan, give that to McGovern, give that to somebody else. But Barrios right now is not worth what he's being paid. And I don't want to speak for you, but I was one of the ones who was saying Barrios $4 or $5 million tops.
Yeah,
he got $7-8 million. And I think people are going to say, oh, it's an overreaction to the last 2 weeks, but I've been on this train for at least probably the whole season, to be completely honest. But Barrios is not as good as people think, and I think it's starting to come to light now because it's being noticed a lot on broadcast angles. But minus his one run against, was it the Packers, where he had a really nice cut up the field on like a jet sweep or end around, but past that, he really hasn't done much this year. And as a returner as well, like, what explosive plays it really has. So I'm sorry to make it like a Barrios, like a shitting on Barrios segment right now, but he deserves it. He's not worth what he's being paid.
Yeah, and even like the hands, I mean, like, there was the play in Denver last year where he let a pass go off his hands and turned it into an interception. He's never really been, like, if you throw a ball straight to him, it's an easy pass. Like, he doesn't drop those, I guess, but like in terms of anything that's remotely difficult, he's never been great at that, which is a limitation of his frame, but he's also just hasn't been great at attacking those balls like the play you just showed. So that's never really been a trait. And then in terms of route running, I mean, like, when has he ever really created for himself, like actually beat a defender on a route? It really doesn't happen. So Barrios at this point, I think there are better ways to make use of some of the opportunities he's gotten recently.
What's up, Jacob? What's up, CD? Paul is, and you kind of not insinuated, but we kind of mentioned the Quinn Williams injury, who didn't practice again today, and obviously this is referencing the Lions game. Now with the Lions, and we'll try to go over it a little bit later. I got to get off at 8, pretty harsh on that time because I go to work at 9 o'clock. But the Lions game, Jared Goff is not as good under pressure, at least throughout his career. I'm not sure how he is this year, but he's not as good under pressure. But the Lions boast one of the better offensive lines, if not the best offensive line the Jets have seen all year. At least up to this point, I would argue for the rest of the year as well. But you don't have Quinn Williams. Obviously, that changes a lot. And the Bills started gaining a lot of yardage after Quinn Williams went out last week. And obviously, he's playing like one of the defensive players of the year, so you're not going to replace him easily. Now, obviously, Sheldon Rankins is a pretty good guy to fill in, but obviously, there's guys who have to fill in for Sheldon Rankins now at that point too. So I am nervous about Quinn Williams not playing, but him not practicing today is obviously not a good sign. At the end of the day, we thought it was a torn. we thought it was a torn. Hamstring, and us as Jets fans are already thinking, okay, well, now what do we pay him? Oh my God, is he going to come back for next year? Is he coming back in November? Like, the worst case scenarios start going through our heads. But if we don't have Quinn Williams, should we be worried about our defensive line versus their offensive line?
No, yeah, I'm really worried. Like, I think that's a huge part of this because, I mean, the Jets defense is the core of why you're confident about this team at all going into any game. And I think he's such a huge part of why this defense is as elite as it is, because just his ability to affect both phases, I think, is huge. Obviously, he's an elite pass rusher, but just a run game too, eating up blocks, making it easier for everyone else. Because how much easier were the Bills running that ball up the middle, whether it was with Allen or on handoffs after Quinn Williams went out in that game? It's just completely different, and it's not something that is going to be replicated by, like you said, you have Rankins, but then Shepard's got to come up a spot. Thomas has to come up a spot. And then someone else has got to come in to fill that other spot. So it's something that none of those guys can really replicate, the ability to do both of those things, both affect the run and the pass. So it's huge. And the offensive line is a big part of why the Lions are a good offensive team, because, you look at them on paper and they have good talent, but like this is an elite offense, the way they played the season, and the talent at the other positions doesn't totally lean to that when you have Jared Goff at quarterback. And St. Brown's been amazing, but outside of that, they don't really have another guy in that level.
Yeah.
But it's the offensive line that puts them up there, why they've been able to be that successful. So that's a huge part of it. Creating holes in the run game, letting Goff do what he can do when he's not pressured is why the Lions are so good. So the Jets don't have their top, disruptor in the defensive line. It changes a whole lot. So that's a very big factor.
And he doesn't throw for a lot of air yards, right? Goff, so it's going to be
short
something that's a lot of,
short and quick,
which is concerning because the last team to really run that short passing offense is the Patriots, and obviously they didn't score a lot on us in New England, but the Jets, if you're going to attack anywhere, it's their safeties and linebackers in coverage, and making those guys make tackles sometimes could be sketchy to say the least. So it's going to be a big game for Quincy, Quan, Mosley, and then the safeties as well, who, Jordan Whitehead's a good tackler. If you're in a phone booth with Jordan Whitehead, watch out. But if you're in the open field with Whitehead, it's not good. Whitehead he's a big time, or he's big time in terms of missed tackles. I think you actually did an article for that as well, in terms of the missed tackles, and Whitehead was up there. Maybe that was somebody else, but I know Whitehead was at least up there. So 2 TDs in the red zone the last 2 weeks. Mike White snuck one in. I guess this is in response to somebody else. They have to be more efficient in the red zone, no doubt about it. Even that play where they snuck it in was very sketchy. He barely got in.
The one touchdown they got was as unimpressive as it can get.
Yeah, exactly. Alex Hunt, what's up? We've been a fourth quarter team this year, and this is the last quarter of the season. Yeah, that's what you hope for, right? Like you evaluate, well, not necessarily, but like 4 quarters of the season. First quarter, okay, Joe Flacco, we didn't really do too great. We had a surprise win or two. Zach Wilson comes back. Second quarter of the season is the best quarter for the Jets in a while. The second quarter, where you're beating the Broncos, you're beating the Packers, you're beating all these teams. Third quarter, we struggled at the gate, definitely. Obviously, 1-3 the last 4 weeks, which is not ideal. How are they going to finish? Do they deserve a playoff spot? If they don't win 3 of these games, they don't win in Miami, you don't deserve it. At the end of the day, they have to produce it. And that game, I can't bitch because in Costa Rica, you're bitching, you're in Costa Rica, but watching that game from Costa Rica, however I'm going to do it, is going to be nerve-wracking to say the least. And, I think it's going to come down to that game. But first, Jets have to take care of business in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully we just win the next 3. Screw it. Realistically, I think they're a better team than the Lions. The Lions are surging right now, but you look at there are numbers about Jared Goff in the cold weather. And I know that it was out there on Twitter that Jared Goff is 0-4 against Saleh. So you have that. You have him not playing as well against Saleh, cold weather, and then the top passing defenses, right? There's numbers out there in terms of the Jets are top 4, and anytime they play a top 10 team, they really struggle in their offense as well. I don't know if you have the numbers handy on that one as well.
Yeah, against I believe is the top 6 scoring defenses this season. They played Philly, Dallas, New England, and Buffalo, and they lost all 4 of those games. And the Jets are 5th right now, Jets are 6th right now. Top 7, that's what it was. Top 7 scoring defenses. Jets are 6th. So yeah, those top defenses. Yeah, that's why I think this, end of the schedule is a good matchup for the Jets, because the Lions are a shootout kind of team. That's how they win games. And the Jets have the defense to kind of limit them enough to where, their offense can do what it needs to do against that defense.
Yeah, it's huge. I really I'm obviously going to go to the Thursday night game, but they need to win this game. Like you can't go 1-for-4 out of the bye and then expect to make the playoffs. Yeah. So if they lose one of these next 2 games, I'm going to be pretty mopey, even though I technically could say, oh, well, if they win the next 2, they could still win in Miami. But you go 1-4, dude. Like, come on.
Yeah, because realistically, they lose to the Lions. Can they win out and still be in a great spot? Yeah, because the conference part of this is huge. Detroit's an NFC team. If they beat Miami at the end, that is going to do a lot. So yeah, realistically, are they still alive if they lose to the Lions? Sure, but if you fall to 7-7 here, lose your 4th game out of 5, can't beat Jared Goff at home, are we confident you're going to win 3 games in a row? No, not at all. Not even confident they'll beat the Jaguars in the next game. So that's why this is such a big game, because I guess, is it a must-win? Literal sense, no, but
it's
you have to win this. It's a must-win. If you realistically are a playoff team, you win this game.
Yeah. It's not a must-win, but they must win this game.
Exactly.
Gary says my best guess is that Jets Dolphins both going to week 18 at 10-6. Well, even if the Dolphins are a game ahead of the Jets, because the Jets, if they beat the Dolphins and match up with, they would have the tiebreaker over them for head-to-head. So we need to be 10-6. Or no, sorry, we need to be at least 9-7, and they need to be 10-6 at that point, right? They can have a game up
as
on
long
us
as they're
at
within
that point.
a game of them. They're good. And the dangerous thing is that, this is why this game is so important, because unless the Jets win the next 3 and the Dolphins lose the next 3, that game is going to determine who's ahead between these two teams. Because if the Dolphins beat the Jets and they end up tied, the Dolphins are going to have the tiebreaker because they have a better conference record. So even if the Jets are ahead of them at that point, then the Dolphins could still get ahead if they win. So that's why that game is so important. And like we said, the Jets have to get ahead of 2 out of these 3 teams, and one of those 3 teams in Miami is just going to come down to that game unless the Jets collapse. So
I think realistically, we want them to win 4. That would be great. But it really is looking like just win 2 of the next 3, and then you have to beat Miami. If you don't beat Miami week 18, you're not going to be in. That's really what's going to come down to. It's us or Miami making it to the playoffs. And I know Tua struggled in recent weeks, and their defense isn't great. And I think it has something to do with them our teams playing a little bit more man coverage against them to disrupt them at the line of scrimmage, not let their RPOs kind of set in. So maybe the Jets, mix up a little bit that game and at least have some more man coverage, or you're going to throw some robbers and Buzz and some guys over the middle who are going to disrupt some of those RPOs and cloud them up. So it's going to be interesting. Christian says vote Sauce and Q for the Pro Bowl last day. I think they're going to have Sauce, Q. They're going to have a couple of guys there, right? I know Joyner was high at one point.
Reed might get in. I think he was 3rd among corners overall, so he might actually get it. I think Hardy's going to get in. So
Hardy wants to get in more than anybody in the world. He's like, vote for me, vote for every 2 seconds it's vote for me. And then at the last second, he's like, basically screw it. I'm going to give away tickets to people who are going to retweet as well. He's trying to get tickets away to get a Pro Bowl. So he really wants to get in. Hopefully he does. Even though I'm
a little selective with my Pro Bowl retweeting. I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to retweet it if it has Joyner in it. I'm sorry. So
Joyner's been terrible, and the only reason that Joyner's in it, I don't know if you went to vote for Pro Bowling or the Pro Bowlers, but you go to
shows
vote
up right at the top because it's just by interceptions. That's the only thing they show.
Exactly. What's up, Pug Life? If we make the playoffs, the energy next year within this team will be nuts. I think it'll be nuts it's gonna be nuts regardless because people are gonna have high expectations. But the thing is, how many this is such an off-season conversation, and we'll have plenty of weeks because we're going to go, at least I'll be live at least every week, probably talking about the Jets, even though this is going to be much more boring off-season than all seasons in the past. But how much of this team is brought back? Realistically, I know, listen, people talk about, you cut Mosley, you move the money to next year, you cut this guy, you move the money to next year. You could get rid of Tomlinson and move the money. You could get rid of Mosley and move the money, but you don't want to just keep stacking up this money that we're going to owe people in 2023, 2024. So with some of these guys, I think you're stuck with Lakin and Mosley, but realistically, are we thinking we're going to get back Quan and Quincy and McGovern and all these realistically, what do you see the Jet? And we're so far out from this. It's really hard, almost unfair to put you in this position, but do you see the Jets retaining most of their own and adding a guy or two? Do you think some guys slipped through the cracks and we're a lesser team at least before the draft than we were this year? Because I don't think at the end of the day, the Jets are going to pay Quinn Williams, $25-ish million a year. Yeah. They don't have a lot of cap space. And just looking at starters right now, we don't know what's going to happen with Brown, but let's assume he's back. Just to assume it because he's under contract, okay? But you don't have a starting center, at least going into free agency. You don't have a starting center, a starting right tackle. You don't have a starting safety. You don't have 2 starting linebackers at this point, right? So can they bring all of those guys back and then add on to the team? It's going to be interesting to see how they manipulate the cap because it's not like we have $80-90 million like we have in the past.
Yeah, I think like you said, it's going to be a more boring offseason in the sense that I don't see them adding to it all that much. I think it's just going to be, like you said, trying to find ways to move the cap around and be creative to get guys back because I think they like this core, just culturally, schematically, and then just talent-wise. I think they're going to want to keep a lot of these guys around. And then next season, I think the improvement will be banked on, the quarterback position. Can you get a full season of improvement there, whether that's Mike White, whether that's someone else, whoever it is? Can you improve at quarterback? Can members of your rookie classes improve? Can JJ have a second-year leap? Can Max Mitchell have a second-year leap? Clemens, can you get Breece Hall back? All the internal development is, I think, how they're going to try to improve, and plus quarterback. So I think it's going to be all about that cap manipulation and trying to see how you could get as many of these guys back as possible. I really don't see them doing too much crazy, unless maybe there's like a big receiver trade that comes open or something, because that was a big thing this past offseason. I don't think a lot of those teams who made moves probably anticipated doing that. It's just that it ended up coming open, so they jumped on it. So something like that, I think the Jets will be more into this year than they might have been last year, like trading a first-round pick for another big receiver, something like that. But in terms of free agency, I don't know if that's going to happen. And even the trade, because of the cap that they're going to spend on their own guys, like Quinnen Williams, specifically him, it's going to be hard to fit that in. But I don't know how much they're going to add this offseason.
Yeah, I'd rather trade for an offensive lineman, to be frank about it, because but at the end of the day, listen, if they could add another, at that point you get rid of Corey Davis, and then you have that receiver, obviously Moore and Wilson. But I think they bring back McGovern. I think you're probably looking at a new right tackle. I think wide receiver 4 is an underrated need for the Jets going into next year. I think Quincy's brought back. I think I would like Quan to be back, because I think he's a locker room guy, and he's solid when he's in. He just doesn't play a ton where I think he's going to want starting level money, and we're not going to give it to him. So I think Quan, Fant are the guys going to be replaced. And then obviously Joyner is not. If Joyner's brought back to be a starter, we have a whole bunch of problems, because the Jets staff, I don't know what they're watching, but they have to know he's not very good. So let's see, Joe. It's been raining all day, and I think tomorrow it's raining too. So hopefully it stops by Sunday. If it's going to be cold and rainy or shitty, I'd rather have to be snowing at 20 degrees than raining at 35. 35-degree rain, sleeting is the absolute worst. So I think Sunday's going to be pretty clear, though. I'm hoping it drops in temperature. I think it's supposed to be 37, 38 around kickoff, around there. I'm hoping for 20. I want it to somehow drop, because Jared Goff is not as good in the cold.
Players freeze him to death. Exactly. Lifetime guy. Now he's in a dome. He doesn't know. He doesn't know how to deal with it.
Jets Unleashed says, to me, it seems Conklin can't catch in man coverage. Conklin, he started off poor with Jets fans because he did have a few easy drops. He did have a few fumbles. The Steelers game when Zach Wilson overthrew him slightly, he hesitated on that throw and threw it high. Conklin still should have caught that, but it was a hard ball to catch. And then versus the Vikings, I highlighted them both in the last live stream, actually, where both catches, he has the ball in his hands, and then the defender punches the ball out or gets his hand in there. So while they would have been great catches, they weren't necessarily oh my God, he absolutely needed to catch that. It was an easy drop or hit him in the chest. So Conklin has been underwhelming to a certain point, but it's not like he's just dropping wide open, easy balls. When you're getting contested and the one ball was behind him, and I know we're pretty, we're on the Mike White train at least as of right now, but the one throw is behind him and he's catching the ball going back to it like this, and the defender gets his hand in there and punches it out. So it's it's a drop, but is it really, or is it a really good play by the defender? I think some people put it in such white or black and white terms where we can acknowledge that defenders make plays as well. And while we could say that we'd like him to catch that ball, I'm not going to crucify him for not catching that ball because the defender punched the ball out. I don't want to be a defender for Conklin, but I kind of just obviously tell it how we see it. But do you have the same sentiment, or do you kind of view it differently in terms of Conklin and some of his drops recently?
No, I agree. I think there have been a lot of those plays recently where it's kind of if the catch was made, it would be a great catch, but it's not a must-have catch in the sense that it's extremely easy, like that one against the Vikings where it's a little bit behind him, it was on him, but catchable, but the blame can be shared between quarterback and pass catcher. So I guess what I would say is, maybe I would like for him to make those a little bit more frequently. You don't expect all of them to be made, but it does feel like he's kind of come up with less of those than I would probably like him to, because just I think in comparison to last year at the Vikings, it's been a little bit less consistent in terms of the hands than I think we expected to be getting. So I would say I'm a little underwhelmed with him in that department, but not to a drastic degree, I would say. But I want to ask you this about Conklin. Do you think they're utilizing his route running to the best of his ability? Because I feel like a lot of the stuff we liked about his Vikings tape, just kind of coming off the end of the line, squaring up linebackers, kind of having those two-way goes. It doesn't really feel like he's getting a lot of that this year. It kind of feels like a lot of it's just in the flat for a check down, just not really utilizing that route running as much. So do you think they could use him better, or do you think it's been fine?
Yeah, like I listen, like there's plays where, and I know he's not, up there in terms of like Jets fans and them liking him, but I agree, like they're not using his ability versus linebackers, and he's not like the primary read at times where I feel like he could be. Like isolate a linebacker and let Conklin run a dig versus him. Like Conklin's he's a good route runner. Now, obviously, again, catch the ball, don't fumble the ball, I get that, but in terms of his route running, it's definitely good. Like I'm not going to question that pretty much ever. So, to have plays with Uzama as a primary read on a curl and Mims as a primary read, like why is it not Conklin? So I agree. I think they should isolate him more versus linebackers because at this point he's, with Corey Davis going down so frequently, he's, I would say at worst, your third best receiving option in terms of just route running. Obviously him more and Garrett Wilson, but he's not being used as such. So it is a little bit disappointing. Jets Unleashed, by the way, hello everybody. I'm assuming this is because I've never seen him in the chat before. So hello Jets Unleashed, welcome. Chris says, good to see Kyle lose some weight, helping him in his analytical process and speaking. Yeah, Kyle, I think it's his wife's birthday today, so he's like doing dinner and stuff, so he couldn't do it. But Friday's a little late, so we're obviously doing on Thursday. But yes, it is nice to see Kyle drop from 220 to whatever Nania is. He's definitely lost some weight.
I got glasses too, so that helps.
Yeah. Your sight is just, well, I think Kyle actually wears glasses sometimes, like reading glasses at least. I don't know. Need to get some draft talk going. Loving being playoff conversation, but can't get used to them.
No,
I have no idea. I have no idea about anything in the draft this year. Like it's usually or at least for me, I'll speak for myself. Like it's so much easier when the Jets are in the top 10 because you could look at the top 10 guys and okay, who are positions of need at the top 10? Like it's easy. You do 5, 10 reviews of guys, 15, 20, whatever it is. But this year the Jets are going to be bottom teens, hopefully pick 31 this year because the 32nd pick is going to be taken away. But it's going to be difficult to evaluate the draft this year. So I think I'm going to do a lot of stuff free agency, let the draft happen, and then jump into the draft because there's just too many variables with the Jets being so low this year that I can't do it. Andrew, appreciate the super chat. Next 3 games, who scares you the most, least, and why? I'll throw that to you, Nania, because you at least I think you have a better knowledge of these teams than I do. I don't know how much you play in your articles and all that stuff, but like in terms of talking about other teams, I have much more faith in you breaking them down than myself until I actually watch them. But who I'll say the Lions out of the next 3 are probably the scariest. I could see the Seahawks. The Seahawks are dropping back down to earth. I know Geno is throwing some more interceptions. Their defense isn't great. I'm excited to see the Woolen versus Sauce thing, even though they obviously don't go necessarily up against each other. But the next 3, I'm going to answer Lions. I don't know if you have a different answer.
No, I agree. I think this is the toughest one over the next 3 games. I mean, the Lions are playing great recently. They've a tremendous offense. And then with Quentin Williams potentially being out, that changed it a lot. But yeah, just looking at the matchups, I mean, these 3 teams I would say are similar the way they played the season, despite the disparity in the records. I mean, Jacksonville's had some close losses to great teams. They've blown a lot of teams out, while Seattle's been more of a middling team, a lot of close games. So I think they're all pretty close. So you lean towards the teams that are playing better recently, and that's Detroit and Jacksonville. And then I look at the Lions and just, they were able to beat the Vikings, so the Jets couldn't beat. They blew out the Jaguars, who are also playing really well recently. They played the Bills very closely. And then before that, they had a 3-game win streak against not the greatest teams, Green Bay, Chicago, and the Giants. But 5-1 the last 6 games is hard to ignore. So especially when you have one of the best offenses in the league. So it's still a team I think the Jets are better than and at home should be because of that Detroit defense, because it's not a good defense, and the Lions deserve to be 6-7. I think because they have a great offense, but the defense is equally bad as the offense is good. It's the second worst scoring defense in the league. So the Jets should put up points on this team, and it just, to me, comes down if the Jets defense can hold the Lions to a middle-of-the-road number, and the offense needs to be sharp to, at home, just like they were against the Bears a couple of weeks ago, need to have that kind of performance. But I mean, Jacksonville, too. Trevor Lawrence is really starting to put it together. He's looked good. That's probably I was going to say he's maybe the best quarterback on their schedule, but I mean, Tua's put up numbers this year. Geno's been really good. So Seattle doesn't is probably the least intimidating team of these past 4 for me, just because they've declined recently. They've lost home games against not good teams, the Raiders, the Panthers. They lost a neutral game to the Bucks. They barely beat the Rams. It was the only win they have since mid-November. So Seattle's kind of fallen off. They also don't have a good defense. Then Miami, I guess. I mean, Miami's better than Detroit, definitely. So maybe I should have picked them as the team that scares me the most. But
I think
just
it's the next three. So you're
next
safe.
three. That's right. Yeah, Miami's the best team of the 4 for sure. But next 3, I think this is the one right here. So I think we'll see what the Jets are made of. If they can win this game, I think you definitely feel good. They could turn it around, win on Thursday, get those 2 wins in 5 days. Your season's right back up, and you win those 2, you feel great about Seattle. But if they lose this game, it gets tough. Like we said earlier, if you win the next 3 after beating Detroit, you're still in a good spot, but you're probably not doing that if you can't beat Detroit. But yeah, next 3 games, I think the Lions are the team that scares me the most. They're playing really well recently.
Jets Unleashed is why, and I don't know if you have a different answer than me on this one, Nania, then let me know. But there's 2 reasons for me. One, he hasn't caught a ball with his hands since Nam. This year, he's everything he's catching with his body. And 2, his route running has legitimately, at least this year, regressed since I watched him at Baylor. He ran routes at least decently at Baylor. This year, everything is get physical off the line, get physical at the route break, and break. There's no nuance to his route running at all this year. So I get let's have Mims in the red zone for 50-50 balls. But part of 50-50 ball is also putting yourself in a good position for said 50-50 ball. He doesn't do that. And when's the last time he's extended and caught a ball really, really that's about outside of his frame? He hasn't done it this year. One of the last catches I remember him even going for with his hands was the dig route. Was it the last Bills game that Zach Wilson threw a really nice ball on dig route? And he dropped it. So Mims his hands have been garbage this year. So that's at least a big part of it for me. Account for commenting to Blewett. Just on this topic of receivers not flattening routes, it's something Lamont Jordan has been harping on for weeks. I've seen it on the over the last. Is that common league wide? I would like you to clarify a little bit for this one, but in terms of route, if you're running a slant, it's all about angles. If you're running a slant versus on 3rd and 1, you don't want, just because you're assuming you have a defender to the outside. If you're running a slant versus him, if you're cutting it high, he has the chance to undercut that route and get on your hip and play the ball. Whereas if you cut it flatter, he has to actually trail you where he doesn't have that angle to cut you off or to get underneath of the route. So when you run routes, when it's a 3rd and 1 slant versus the sticks or pass or 3rd and 1 route or 3rd and 1 slant, you want to run the route a yard or 2 past the sticks and then flatten out so it's an easier throw to make for the quarterback. But when you take it high, again, it's all about angles, and it gives the corner a better angle to make a play on the ball. So certain routes, yes, you definitely have to flatten them out and be knowledgeable of the sticks. And that was one of the problems that Garrett Wilson had initially during the season, was him running his routes too short of the sticks, and that's different than flattening them out. But it's something that Barrios didn't do well on that last play either. It's something that people don't mention, but you watch that and he drifts, 5-6 yards past the line of scrimmage or past the first down marker. You cannot do that. In that situation, you just got to get the first down. So that was frustrating. I'm going to skip some comments about Zach because, that Broncos game. If Bryce Hall didn't have a 60-yard run, what's the end of that? What's the score in that game? It's. Again, everybody's good on the team. If we're going to take the thing that Zach is 5-2, again, everybody when we play, when we win a game is good. Connor McDermott's good when we win games. Jordan's good when we win games. You can have a quarterback who's struggling and the team still win the game because the defense has been top 5 and the running game carried by Bryce Hall in the Packers game, punt blocks, all that stuff. Punt blocks for touchdowns, block field goals. Bryce Hall dominating. We can, and the thing is you do the film as well, Nania. We can go back and objectively pull up plays where this play was missed, this play was missed, this play was missed, this play, that play, this. So we have at least receipts. I'm not going to go back and look at them all now, but Zach did not win us any one of those games minus the Steelers' fourth quarter. Okay, great. But why were you in the position for him to win us the game? Because his first 3 quarters, he made massive mistakes. So the only game that I'll say he was legitimately good in, and people are going to say, oh, we'll check down, whatever, 150 yards. The Bills game, he was good. I'll give him that. Yeah. Past that, he did not earn any of those wins to me. And even that last, the Bills game, like how much faith did they show in him? Like the last drive where we came back and won the game for ourselves, we ran the ball like 75 times, so it's not like it was Zach Wilson's arm that won us that last drive. So, and listen, like there's nobody, I'm not going to say I have 130 people in here. I'm sure all 130 of us want Zach Wilson to work out and dominate and be the quarterback we drafted him to be. But unfortunately, we presented with a ton of bad evidence that he wasn't going to be that guy, or at least he's not that guy now. So nobody came out and just hated him because, his uncle's from JetBlue and he's a rich, spoiled kid. Like we all wanted him to work out. We were all invested in the kid. But when he sucks, and we have to acknowledge that he sucked in those games, regardless of his record. So it's annoying with the 5-2 stuff. But if you want to comment on, go ahead. I shouldn't have even said that much about it because we've been talking about it for weeks. It's crazy, but
no, yeah, like it is crazy that it even has to be acknowledged because just because the team wins or loses, it doesn't mean everyone was good or everyone was bad. If you win a game 50 to, like if you're that Chiefs Rams game from a few years ago where there's 53-50 or whatever, you think the Chiefs loved how their defense played or the Rams loved how their defense played, and so it's like you just got to analyze the players individually. Like after that Broncos game, we were talking about it. They won. The Jets had 4 wins in a row, but we were still pointing out like Zach Wilson's not playing great right now, and this could come back to bite them, and it did. So it's not what anyone wants. It definitely isn't. I think we were both high on that pick, high on him after the way he finished that rookie year, and even I think after the first couple of games this year, I think there were some things to like, but it just was not good from that point on. So. Yeah, I mean, do you want to talk about Mike White a little bit because we haven't really focused on him? Because I liked his performance in this game. I think 3 games in, like I think you're looking at 3 really solid performances. I'd say maybe like an A minus kind of game, then 2 B plus games. I guess I would say. So yeah, I'm just very pleasantly surprised at the way he's played because I expected him to come in and just, throw the screen passes accurately, hit the checkdowns when he should hit the checkdowns, not get sacked that much, and just, manage the game like I think he did against the Bengals last year. But he's looked like a completely different quarterback, just the confidence to attack tight windows, stand in the pocket and take hits, and just a number of big-time throws on third down, deep down the field, opposite hash, under pressure. Just he's hit a lot of big money throws that I think if any, rookie quarterback or young quarterback was hitting, like it would be all over the place as evidence he's going to be great. But with Mike White, it kind of feels like it's not praised as much because it almost seems like an outlier or you don't expect it or, he isn't that type of young quarterback. But I've been legitimately impressed with him in these 3 games.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, he lost us these games. Like I'm gonna argue that the defense and Mike Lafleur lost us the Vikings game more than he did. Or like this game, it's part of the offense, but like Michael Carter doesn't fumble that ball. Do we lose that game? Like at least we have a lot better chance to win the game. So
his fumble.
Yeah, Flacco's fumble, Flacco missing Conklin wide open up the seam. Like it's on the team. It's not just on one guy. So it's crazy. Like he's not gonna other quarterbacks who take more of the like onus, whatever, like, okay, Patrick Mahomes can put a team on his back. Yeah, Mike White's not Patrick Mahomes, it's obviously. And I think I was a little bit lower on the Vikings game than you are just because of like some of the plays, the Harrison Smith cover 4, forcing that ball, like little things. But like overall, like I'm going to give him a B plus for what he's been doing, probably a B plus. Like this game, he didn't start off great. And I wrote it down from my review. He took 2 sacks. The one sack he rolled out, should have thrown the ball away. It was first down. The one sack he took, but it was also that's almost more on Lafleur for the play design of that play than it was on Mike White. He had the miss to Conklin that was a little bit behind him, where Conklin drifted up a little bit more upfield than he should have, and Mike White should have noticed he was drifting up the field a little bit. He missed more on a screen where the ball slipped out of his hands. He missed Garrett Wilson on an open third down. He had a pass batted. Like he didn't start off great, but past that point he was good. Like how many plays of 3rd and 10 or more did he convert in this game? Like he had the one where he got absolutely rocked, came out for a couple of plays. I think Joe Flacco, what was it? It was he got rocked. I forget exactly who it went to. Joe Flacco came in, ran the ball, not much yardage, second down, missed Conklin up the seam. It's like 3rd and 10 again, comes in and throws another seed for a first down later in the game. And that was right after he got absolutely rocked too. So he gets rocked, and then the next throw, there's a D tackle in his face. He steps into a throw with a D tackle in his face after he just got smacked. Like there's plenty of quarterbacks in that situation who are going to cower down because literally their last play, they got absolutely destroyed. So I was impressed with that. There was a play I put up on the review of of him. I forget exactly the situation was. So it was a Corey Davis throw in the first quarter on that. I put up the dagger concept where the dagger concept, you're going to read the inside seam. He sees the linebacker carrying the inside seam. And typically when that linebacker carries and the safeties are high, the dig is going to come open underneath of it. And he sees the seam coming. He looks at Davis, knows that Davis is working inside on the dig, checks the linebacker again, or to look him off, confirms what he's seeing, throws the ball in perfect location to Corey Davis, who obviously goes out at that point with a concussion. But like, he had a lot of good throws this game. Now there are some plays where, you don't want to see him take a sack. That Elijah Moore throw late in the game, you want to see him lead him better on that play. But like, we're going to blame him for certain little things like the Vikings game. Okay, the little bit of bad accuracy in terms of not hitting Barrios there in better location where Barrios dropped it. But like this game, he hit Barrios in the face on 3rd and 1, and we're blaming Mike White for losing the game. So I know there's some other throws I can actually go over in my actual like film section, so I could pull up the top of my head. But there's a lot of good throws in this game that he made. So is there any other throws that he did or didn't make that kind of stand out in your mind for Mike White?
Well, I just love, like making throws on out routes from the opposite hash is, I feel like, one of the most underrated, difficult throws for a quarterback. And he made, 3 or 4 of those, and a lot of them were pressured and with anticipation. The one throw he made, I think it was on that one of those final drives where the ball was like halfway there before Wilson turned around. After Wilson beat Tre'Davious White, which he did a few times in this game.
Yeah, we'll talk about Wilson a little bit. Yeah.
I love those. The one he made, the first one that knocked him out, where he got speared in the chest, drops it over the linebacker to Elijah Moore in stride. That's about as good as the throw can get to me. So, it hardly gets more difficult to complete a pass than that, for me at least. So. Just the big time throws. I think when people evaluate quarterbacks, they look at their stats, they look at how many. This
was the next play too. Sorry,
yeah, and the next
play after he got speared.
Next play, you come in, here's Milano in your chest again, and just a seed 3rd and 10. It's just ridiculous. So I think people look at the quarterback stats, they look at the points on the board, and they attribute that to the quarterback. But the points, that's on the whole entire offense. The quarterback stats, I think that's also more so a product of how the whole unit functioned, more so than the quarterback himself. For me, I think if an average quarterback were in this game, like average quarterback performance, not to say that he's proven better than average yet, but if you got an average quarterback performance in this game, I don't know if the Jets score any points, because the average quarterback is not making all the throws that Mike White made in this game. So I think that's the value he added. And the reason they didn't put up more points is because he had 2 drives that were killed with fumbles. You had Flacco killing a drive and missing a wide open throw. You had a run game that did nothing. You had play calling that didn't really draw anything up. You had Mims, who can't catch anything or get open against anyone. So I think those are more the reasons. And also, you didn't get any takeaways. You didn't get any special teams spark. So those are some of the reasons you don't score more points. But you look at the quarterback and what he's doing. All I see are big throws and big spots, and obviously he made some mistakes. He brought some of them up. I'm not saying he's perfect. I put a lot of his mistakes in the breakdown that I put up earlier today. So he wasn't perfect, but it was definitely more good than bad. And with better support, it would translate into better production and points.
Yeah, and like that was the one thing. Like you get the comments obviously after, and it's like, oh, well, he's a check down quarterback. He 3rd down. Show me all the plays that he threw short of the 6. He had like 3 or 4 plays where it was 3rd and 10, and he converted like this play. And which, by the way,
this is terrible.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson was definitely not out of bounds here. Like it's just if this is Stephon Diggs, are they throwing a penalty? Like at a certain point, like I think obviously fans are going to say, oh well, poor me with the ref stuff, but like the Jets, dude, like this is when he got hit. It's like, are we really? It's crazy. But yeah, 3rd and 10s, converting them. The throw to Barrios, I put up here, which was a seed. Now I could argue, okay, he's reading the safety, he's flipped inside, he doesn't expect him to speed turn as well as he does right there to get to the ball. You want to see it a little tiny more bit to the outside, but again, really good read, really good throw into pressure. Now again, there are like a couple of plays a game where I want him to clean up a little bit, but like how much more did you want him to do this game? And we talk about Zach Wilson, like when Zach Wilson gets hit in a game and he completely cowers for the rest of the game. And like at a certain point, yes, the Zach Wilson and I don't like to bring him up. Like at a certain point, he does help the offensive line in terms of getting away from pressure, but he also creates his own pressure as well because he's not willing to step up into a pocket like Mike White is. So to me, what the hell happened to Mike White in the preseason? Like he looked like absolute ball. So I don't know what happened to him, but he's come back well. But his arm is better than I remember it last year. His stepping up into the pocket and taking hits is better than I remember it last year. And people blame him for that too. I got a comment like, oh, well, at what point are we going to blame him for taking hits? Like it's risk versus reward. But he showed a lot of grit this game, a lot of good accuracy. And when he's not accurate, I think you brought this up even in maybe it was in an article or maybe it was in our Jets our Slack. Like when he has bad accuracy plays, it's pinpoint versus general. Where Zach Wilson will miss a guy by 15 yards over his head like he did in the Broncos game in the first two throws. Like, there are throws where I want to see, again, him throw to Elijah Moore in stride to the sideline or put it in front of Barrios or put it in front of Conklin. But he's not missing by yards and yards. He's missing by a yard. So his accuracy has been good. His decision-making has been good. Now, with that being said, like you criticize him in your article as well. Now, there are some plays where he gets off of his first read too quickly. The throw actually, and there's some plays he actually got stuck. I would say his worst, and there's another throw I'm free on the top of my head. The throw to Uzama on I believe it was third down. Yeah. He needs to get through his reads quicker there and then hit the backside. And there's another throw that we both discussed on that. There was a fourth down play on that. It was a sail concept, right? Yeah, the sail concept. There's an out where I wanted to see him stick onto the sail concept a little bit longer. He goes to the check down on third and 10. And releases the ball too quickly there. And then the other play where he missed Garrett Wilson wide open on a corner route because he gets to Mims too quickly, who, by the way, Mims is running across the field on an over route and completely gives up on his route because he knows he's covered, which is embarrassing for a guy who wants to play more and deserves it and all this stuff. And the woe is me Mims shit. He's not running his routes all the way when he's seeing he's covered, which is embarrassing. But past that, like 3 bad Mike White plays off the top of my head where like I'll legitimately ding him. Is there any other plays other than that you can think of?
There was the one where Milano almost got him.
Oh, that was the worst play of the game.
He's going for Mims. That was definitely the worst play he had. Probably like the only interception worthy pass I guess he's thrown this season. In terms of one that probably should have been. So there was that one. Other than that though, I mean, definitely more good than bad. And like you said with the accuracy, I think that's an important caveat to have. That was. Yeah, come on.
Yeah, so this is for the Mims truthers right here. Watch him when he realizes he's covered how hard he's running that route. But sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, I think that's an important caveat with accuracy. Like you're saying, it's never as simple as like complete or incomplete because there are incompletions where you give the receiver 0 chance of catching the ball, and then there's incompletions where it could be better, and you're making it harder on them, but you're still giving them a chance. And I think that's what Mike White's misses have generally been this year, especially in the Vikings game, where it's like, all right, yes, you can be better, but it's like you knock the quarterback to varying degrees. If you're throwing a screen pass over someone's head, that's a terrible job because you give them no chance. But if it's just a little bit behind, a little bit high, then it's like, yes, it's still not ideal, but it's catchable. So it's something. I think that's something he can sharpen. Like there are times where maybe it could be more precise. But in general, he's given his guys chances, and I think that's a good thing. So yeah, I've been impressed with him so far.
Yeah, so you have one play stuck on his read too long. You have a play where he got off of his first read too quickly. Again, you have a few accuracy plays, and then the play that was legitimately bad, like another one that was at least the turnover worthy play where I just showed it. Conklin sitting underneath, you cannot force that ball he threw it to Conklin or. I forget who that throw was to, but he forced it on the sideline there. That was pretty bad. But past that, he was good. Like, a little bit over 60 completion percentage, around 250 yards. And it, again, black and white stuff. Like there's that gray area. There are problems with Lafleur. There are problems with the run game. The run game, minus a few explosive plays, it feels like every time they ran the ball, it was into a stacked box. And they never picked up like good yardage. Like I know, and obviously Zonovan Knight had a few like 10-yard runs in this, but like past the 10-yard run, it was like a 1-yard gain. Like the run game was not setting them up in any ideal situations. So that's part of it. Like there's many parts to an NFL game. So just to say, oh, they lost Mike White. Okay, again. So when they win, everybody's good. When they lose, everybody's bad. And every single game that's been won, that quarterback was good. There's never been a game in the NFL, Mike, I don't know if you know this, just so sit down, buckle in. Every single game that is won in the NFL, the quarterback is good that game, and they led up to that win. You knew that. It's been a while. I've been doing analytical stuff, but I know I'm blowing your mind there. So it's like it's just he's been good, man. B plus for me so far through 3 weeks. Now hopefully he gets some more support from the defense. Like that's the thing we'll discuss maybe in the future. But like the defense isn't forcing turnovers. Those games versus the Broncos, those games versus the Packers, those games even versus the Patriots, like they were forcing turnovers. When's the last turnover they've had? When is the last turnover they've had?
Like meaningful turnover, because the only post-bye one they've had is the Mosley interception, and the game was over at that point. So post-bye, they don't have a single meaningful takeaway. It hasn't been since
that was a pick with like 2 minutes left or a minute and a half left versus the Bears. So their last interception or their last turnover was the Bills. Oh, no, the Patriots game, right?
The Sauce Gardner interception. And the
that was their last. Yeah, they got to do
one that's meaningful if you count out the Mosley one.
What do you
think is the reason mainly? Do you think for takeaways? I mean, they've had Jordan Whitehead's had some good shots that he missed on.
God, man.
He can't catch anything. I don't know, because sometimes it feels like the Jets create pressure, they cover well. It's like, is there more they could do to get those takeaways, or it's just not bouncing their way?
I think a part of it is when the ball bouncing their way on some fumbles. I think another part of it is their safeties have to learn how to catch and track a ball like that. Not only the play of Whitehead where the ball went through his hands, but what about the play last week where the Vikings where Kirk Cousins is getting pressured and chucks a Hail Mary ball up there, and Jordan Whitehead completely overruns it, and LaMarcus Joyner is completely lost. Like that's a play that a normal safety duo probably picks that ball off. Now, with that being said, in terms of like, okay, you're creating pressure, you assume there'll be more interceptions. Like the Jets are playing a lot of like 3-6. 3, 6, and 4. So like their corners are definitely more over the top. So I think if they were to play more man and press guys up a little bit and get in their face and disrupt some shorter routes, they'd probably get more interceptions. But past that, I think they just have to take advantage of the opportunities that are presented to themselves, and the Jets have not done that. Like, and I know fumbles to a certain extent is luck of the bounce, but like how many was it the Bills game where Dawson Knox, or no, maybe it was a Bears game where so many fumbles, and they're literally on the ground. That
Bears game, definitely. Yeah, that was where that bad one was.
On the ground, the ball is bouncing 2 yards away from them, and Cole Kmet on the ground with the guy on top of him reaches out, grabs the ball, and then pulls it to him when there's Jets defenders around the ball. You have the play versus the Bills where it was one of their receivers fumbles the ball, and Lawson doesn't dive on the ball, and Reed misses. It was harder for Reed, but like Lawson is running towards the ball and like doesn't want to throw his body on the line. I don't know what that was about, but he was right there, didn't fumble it. So they have to also capitalize. So I think part of it's luck of the bounce, and part of it's the Jets not capitalizing on their opportunity as well. So
definitely something that they're going to need more of, because you look at both these two games. You lose by 5 to the Vikings, 1 touchdown to the Bills, and just one takeaway could have changed the entire game in either of those. So it's you're down 4-0 in the turnovers the last 2 games, and that's playing on the road against elite teams, and you lose by 1 score. You can point directly to and one of those Vikings turnovers was the end of the game, so it didn't really matter. But I guess 3-0 in the turnovers the last 2 games.
Yeah. Twisted said, Joe, what's going on with the defense? The defense in the Vikings game was legit. I know they only let up 7 second-half points in that game, but like you had a coverage bust from DJ Reed that should have been a Hawkinson 50-yard gain or something like that. So I think Reed has come back down to earth a little bit in the last couple of weeks. Mosley and like talk about the defense this game, like you're on the Bills' own 40-yard line with like about 2 minutes left, and Mosley jumps over the line. Like 99 times out of 100, they're not going to snap that ball, and he has to know that. And he jumps over the line, and then what does that result in? A Bills touchdown. So like they're shooting themselves in the foot a little bit, blown defenses. The safeties are and never have been good. There are some weeks where people think they were good because LaMarcus Joyner picked off Kenny Pickett twice or whatever it was. LaMarcus Joyner is one of the, if not the worst starting free safety in the league. Like he is god awful. Jordan Whitehead is not a good safety either. I'm sorry. And I said that at least since he was signed, that he was not as good as people think he was. So I think your safeties aren't strong. And I think with your linebackers too, like Quincy's been better than expected this year, but they're not necessarily a strength. So blown defenses, the safeties have popped up the last couple of weeks, but they need to improve because they're playing some good offenses down the stretch, and they need to kind of get back to their Packers, Broncos, outings, even though at the end of the day, they've let up 20 points to the Bills, which you're not necessarily going to lose your mind about. But with that being said, you have one of the first plays of the game where Michael Carter II gets beat by Diggs, and it could have been a 70-yard touchdown because
that was a touchdown. It was Diggs against Joyner. I'm going to put my money against Diggs.
Yeah,
They lucked
exactly.
out on that one.
Anything else to add to the Mike White game? Because we only have like 40 minutes left, so we have to run through some other of the team and through the chat as well. So if you have anything pressing about Mike White this game, or any stats or anything like that, you can throw it out there.
I guess one stat I'd throw out there is he has, since he's come in this year, so over the last 3 games, he has 11 tight window completions, which is when the receiver has less than 1 yard of separation from the defender. That's the most in the league over the past 3 weeks. So kind of backs up what we've seen. Like, this is very high level, the number of these kind of big time throws that he's making. So we'll see where it goes from here. There's still 4 games left this season. And even, once the season's all said and done, you're still only talking about a 7-game sample. But if he keeps maintaining what he's done through these 3 games, if that is what he maintains throughout all 7, then I think it's going to be interesting, but a long way to go until that point.
Mm-hmm. Art says, Joe, my oversimplification is that Mike Lafleur, which is now abbreviated MILF by some people, is good at play design, but is lacking in situational awareness. But I trust her. It's a combination of both. Like I'm okay with Mike Lafleur, but like I said, like you don't roll out Mike White to the side where Conklin's having to sift underneath the defense to block that side. Like that's a very, very hard play for Conklin to make. Having Barrios with the most space on a slant in the red zone, not a great play. The play that Hawk was talking about before, where Barrios says it was just to get open, obviously not a good play. You have plays where your primary reads are Mims and Uzama is not a good play. So there are plays where they're actually not good designs. And then last week was frustrating. Like, again, I think a lot of people talk about Michael Lafleur and said, oh, well, just those 4 plays in the red zone, not running the ball. And even on those plays, like, listen, going out, I'm not going to go crazy about, going into shotgun, but the 4th down play, going into empty, having no threat of a run, and your linebackers and safeties being able to squat on any route is annoying. But it was more about getting too fancy in the red zone. Like, again, like the entire game, 20-20, we're killing it. And then literally we're running an end around where Wilson has to pass. We're running it was a fake screen to one side, a screen to the other side that picked up no yards. It was a play where it was a fake pumped screen to 2 seam routes, which I think they actually did versus the Lions, by the way, with Sam Darnold. That just came into my mind. His first game that actually worked.
Yeah.
But like he was taking a lot of high variance type plays in the red zone where that's not how they got there. So sometimes his play design is not good, and sometimes his situational awareness is not good. Like they struggle mightily on 3rd and short. I don't know if you have numbers on that, but like they're converting 3rd and 10s this week. Like I'm more confident in them 3rd and 7 than I am 3rd and 1. Like it's just the lack of a threat of the running game has been frustrating. There's times where like even and listen, I'm gonna be transparent with everything. Like there are some times he can set Zach Wilson up in that situation. Like he's running deep concepts versus teams who are showing blitz looks with a quarterback who is clearly struggling versus blitz looks. So like give him some easier options. Like the first game against the Bills, like he gave him a lot of RPOs, a lot of double slants, a lot of really easy concepts to operate. And then the next game against the Pats, at least the best of my memory, it was more deep concepts and not as many short options. So like Mike Lafleur is definitely not great at this point, but I think it's a combination of both things. Again, I don't think it's black or white here. There's definitely a gray area where I think it's a mixture of both of those things.
No, I agree. And the one thing you brought up that is a very important thing for them to improve on is the 3rd and short struggles is just. It's ridiculous at this point. I forget what the exact numbers were, but I know going into the bye, they were the worst at both 3rd and 1 and 3rd and 2. And then I haven't checked on it since then, but I think we can say we're pretty certain that hasn't changed the past 4 games. And like you said, you feel more confident in 3rd and 10 now that Mike White's going to drop back and throw a dime to get you out of that than you do with them being able to punch the ball in from the goal line when they're 1 yard out. It's pretty crazy. And even like, that situation on the field goal drive against the Bills, you just have 1 yard to go and you're not confident you can get that. And it ends up going to Barrios. So yeah, they really got to figure out how to be better in these 1 yard situations. Cause that's what's held the Jets back from 2 wins now. Like some of these 1-yard situations is even the Patriots game, and this one's on Zach Wilson, but when Moore was wide open on that drag route while they're trying to drive to win that game. So like 1 yard to go situations have cost the Jets multiple wins at this point. And like, it's frustrating when you could move the ball so well, 20-20. And then it's just sometimes you need 1 yard and you can't get that.
Now, what is your thoughts? And I have my opinion on this. And I know you agree with like I say all the time, like process versus results, but with that being in mind, like the 4th and 1 late in the game, what were your thoughts on going for it versus kicking that field goal?
So when I was watching it live, I feel like I was kind of leaning towards the field goal. But when I thought about it later, I think that it was probably better to go for it at that point, because like when you think about it, you have to, like, what's your goal at that point? You want 1 field goal and then touchdown, obviously the 2-point conversion. So you have to get that touchdown at some point. Mm-hmm. And, you go for it there. Ideally, you convert that. It's a 1 yard to go situation. If you can't get that on 2 tries, then what are we even doing anyway? So if you get that, you're how far were they at that point? 5, 10 yards?
Yeah, 6, 7 yards away.
They're right there. So
yeah,
the goal is you score the touchdown there. You get the ball back later, which they did. And then at that point, you only have to get to the 35, 40 to have a chance at a field goal versus, kicking the field goal as they did. Then you get the ball back. Now you have to go a whole 30, 40 extra yards to get that touchdown. And it's easier to defend as a defense when you have that in mind, where it's touchdown or bust. So in retrospect, I do think that, maybe not even in retrospect, because I'm sure most of the, go for it versus punt models and all that stuff would say that as well. But I think going for it probably was the right call there. But then again, with what we were just talking about, it's like, okay, are you even confident the Jets can get 1 yard? So that's a big problem.
Yeah, I think people look at it like, oh, well, if they didn't get the first down there, then the game is over. But at that point, like it's also a time thing. Like you have to factor in the time, because then you have to drive, you kick the field goal, you have to drive another, 60 yards or whatever it was in like a minute. Like you have to factor in, like you said, those extra 30, 40 yards in that with that time. So I think the better chance of you winning is going for that play and then kicking the field goal later, because are you really going to be able to drive that extra 30, 40 yards with limited time to be able to get that next touchdown? I just didn't think it was very realistic. So I wanted them to go for it. And that's Monday morning quarterbacking. I think I tweeted at the time, at least, or maybe not, but if you just trust me, whatever. But we're going to run through the chat until we catch up. We're going to be really, really quick about it, because we're like very far behind, and then we'll get into we'll lightning around some of the other position groups. Chris, I'll give a $5 super chat. Didn't say anything, but a couple chats later said we're going to go out. So appreciate the super chat, Chris. Definitely. Let's see. Before the year began, the next 3 games were considered. Yeah. And like Lawrence, like it's just like the Jaguars, they get blown out versus the Lions, but they beat the Ravens and they beat the Titans. It's like they're up and down, like usual young teams are. Somebody says, listen, while I find some more chats, by the way, which dude, man has to go. Like, and it's funny because I was going through my drawer, obviously, getting up, looking for a shirt to wear. And I pulled out the man myth legend shirt. Like, I don't think I'm gonna wear that for the stream. So I think I'm gonna donate the man myth legend shirt, maybe a Zach Wilson shirt, maybe a Becton shirt, I don't know, but man, it's like the high variance of him. Like, I'd rather just have a guy who's consistently, like Moore said, getting 45, 46 yards, whatever it may be, but like man is either like punting the ball 60 yards or like shanking 130 yards. And like this game, he had multiple punts where like he had more room to punt the ball 50 yards, and there are 41, 42 yard punts. And then how many of these and like, people don't think about this, because they just look at, okay, well, he punted the ball this far. What is his hang time right now? Because he throws so many line drives. It's like ridiculous. So I think this should be man's last year as a Jet. I can't deal with the high variance of his punting. He's been pretty bad, at least. And, to my eye, I don't have the numbers on punting and his efficiency and all that stuff. But
yeah, I think I agree, just because the variance, like you look at some numbers and I think he's like middle of the pack in some of the net punting and stuff like that right now. But like when you watch it, it's like you said, I feel like the shanks kind of hurt your team more than it might help your team to occasionally have a good punt, I guess, if that makes sense, because it feels like he much more commonly than average is shanking a punt. And then there have been mistakes this year, like he slipped on the kickoff, not punting it out of bounds against the Patriots on that last punt. Then the hang time, like you said, at times isn't great. And even when he does kick it far in terms of just actual distance, sometimes it's just out kicking the coverage and they return the yards back anyway. So I don't know if he's been terrible overall, but like you said, I think that stability is kind of what you would value more out of a punter.
Art says cut Lawson. I think Lawson is getting paid $15 million to play like he's worth $8 or $9 million.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
O-line next year. If you're relying on Becton to be your starting left tackle, we have problems. I would love for Becton to work out, but he hasn't been healthy in 2 years, and even his rookie year, he wasn't overly healthy. And then moving AVT to right tackle, the conversation in a different day. Big Daddy says CJ Mosley and Carl Lawson could be gone unless he works his contract. CJ Mosley has already reworked his contract. If the Jets cut him, that he has them by like his salary is going to be brutal for the Jets next couple of years. So I think Mosley's back. No, he's been suspect, Barrios, and even the punt returns. Like one of the most like elementary football things is if the ball is going to bounce past the 10-yard line, you fair catch that ball because you don't want it to roll. How many, like, it seems like every game, like a ball is bouncing to the 15, 20-yard line. Barrios doesn't field it and it rolls to like the 4-yard line. So Barrios hasn't been a good punt returner, not a good, he hasn't been good really anywhere this year. So I am struggling with Barrios. And like, listen, like people, oh, it's a tough catch. It hits him in the face mask. Even if you catch a ball like this, like it's better than, like, was it the newest, longest? You're not gonna know this. I don't know. I feel like I'm obviously a little bit older than you, but like I think it was the newest, longest yard where like somebody gets hit in the face mask. That's how they catch the balls. Like longest yard or little giant or something like that. Like is that what he was expecting? Like I don't know. While I look at some more stuff, Bryce Huff, interesting conversation. What is just quickly, what do you think his contract's going to be? Because you have Bryce Huff where, he's situationally used, 15, 20 snaps, whatever it is. But if you're Bryce Huff and you're his agents, you'd be absolute fools to walk to the table and not say, hey, listen, yeah, we're really productive on 20% of the snaps here, but we feel like we could be a full-time edge rusher on a team and play 70% of the snaps. So pay me like that and I'll stay. So like, Bryce Huff's interesting. I want to see him back, but I don't know if they're going to be able to keep him, which will hurt because he's a guy who's been groomed here as a UDFA.
Yeah, he'll be really interesting because of exactly what you said. Because in his role, he's not playing much now, but it's hard not to look at the production he has, where on a per play basis, he's matching pretty much anyone in the league, playing like a superstar, really. And it's hard not to look at that and imagine another team thinking, okay, let's sign this guy as a starter and he's going to come in for us and be, carry over those numbers in a larger role. So is he going to get paid like he's a starter? Is he going to be get paid like a backup or somewhere in between there? I'd say it's probably somewhere in the middle where, teams are going to project that he can do that, but maybe not pay him to the point where it's a certainty he'll be a great starter. So yeah, I guess somewhere in that mid-range is where he might end up. But it's really interesting because some team might overpay to make sure they get him in because there's so much potential with what he's doing right now. So would love for the Jets to have him back. We mentioned Lawson briefly a couple minutes ago. I think maybe the play is to find a way to slot Bryce Huff into that role next year because there's just a lot of upside with what he's doing in such a limited amount of time.
What do you say? What do you think the contract would be for him? Like, if you had to guess?
For
what do you think
8 per year, something like that.
I said like 7, 8. It's just gonna be.
Yeah.
It's gonna be hard. Like, and I mentioned it. I know some guys have been like crushing and whatever. But like, if you get rid of Lawson, like, who's gonna play right end for the Jets next year? Because Huff has been playing on the left side. JJ's been playing on the left side. So who is the right end? It's just it's hard to fill that spot. I know they've been training in it. But can they actually produce at that level? I'm not sure. But I want to see Huff back because he's so fucking good, man. He's such a good. I don't know if you're gonna show. So if you're saying I'm not showing anything of White bad. I literally showed 2 plays of him and talked about him missing throws and showed him almost intercepting a ball. So this isn't just a White love session. Like I show all of it. And I said it. Listen, like even the Vikings game, people blew up that game for him. And I don't know what grounders you're talking about because he doesn't really throw a lot of grounders. The Vikings game, he threw a ball that should have been picked off by Harrison Smith late in that drive. Cover 4 with the number 2 sitting underneath. You have to assume it's going to be a bracket there, or they're going to double team the 1 on a vertical. They double team the one on a vertical, and he tries to force a ball in there that he can't fit in there, and he almost throws a pick. He almost threw a pick versus Milano. Like, he has bad plays too, but this is I'm not the person to just take one side of the argument and kind of cover up the bad. Like, that's not going to happen. So, let's see, blocked punt. I don't know what that's talking about, but yeah. So Bryce Huff, $7-8 million. Is he worth $7-8 million for only playing 20% of the reps? It's going to be fascinating to figure that out. What's the reason that Parks got waived? There was something that he might have missed practice as well too, right? Like he missed practice, like non injury thing or something like that. Like,
I think he missed the Wednesday practice. They said it was non-injury, so I don't really know what that was about.
Mm-hmm. This is one thing that I said in my review, Steven. I think I said it this week at least, maybe in a prior week. There's two things I don't love about run games. I absolutely hate outside zone from gun. I hate it. I rarely see it work. It's just something I hate it. Just preferences of watching plays. I don't really understand it. And then in short yardage situations, I don't like a lot of movement. I don't like, counter OF, counter OH, traps, whams, one back power, darts, anything with pullers and a lot of movement up front when you're expecting hard penetration from especially an aggressive front like the Bills. I don't like it. And there were some plays that like Michael Lafleur put Connor McGovern in a shitty position. Like that one play where I don't know if you remember, Mike White like steps up in the pocket, almost takes a sack and then runs out and then takes a sack. Like that play, you're asking McGovern to work to a loose 3-tech to block him. It's Ed Oliver and a hard penetrating front. Like, how hard that is to do for McGovern to cover all that ground. So you're not putting him in a good position. Like, you have to at least have your tackle step down and chip him or check him, hand check him, which is the proper terminology, to let McGovern get there. And it never happens. So like there's some plays where like they're using too much cuteness, I would say, as well. So I agree about that. Let's go through the running backs while I sit through some more of the chats since this got mentioned. Carter up the middle versus Gore up the middle to discuss. This is another guy who, like, I love Carter. I love his personality, all this stuff. To say that Carter's been good this year is a reach. And again, I'm not going to gas up anybody or kill anybody for no reason. Like, I'll legitimately show you plays if I have to. But Carter, minus a couple of plays versus the Bills, maybe a couple plays versus the Ravens. I know he's had an ankle injury this year, but like, I don't even think Carter's been decent this year. Carter has not been good. His rookie year, breaking a lot of tackles, really decisive in the run game. This year, I think he's got a little bit unlucky in terms of him not getting the best plays blocked up for him. But he's not breaking a lot of tackles. He's dancing a little bit too much. His contact balance doesn't seem to be as good this game. Listen, I know he's struggling. 5 rushes, 5 yards, but at the end of the day, and I bring it up in the review, like, again, people are results driven, but when he trucks whoever he trucks for the first down, awesome play. If you're going to dive for more yardage, you need to have 2 hands on the ball, because if you're diving for more yardage and one hand is out, dude, that ball is so loose. If you're diving for it, 2 hands on the ball, okay, I'm cool with that process. Diving for a first down with one hand on the ball, with one arm on the ball, is not a good process. He fumbles the ball. So Carter definitely lost his number 1 spot. And like next year, let's say, Brees comes back healthy, October, whenever it is, hopefully it's week 1 of the season, and Zonovan Knight continues to produce. What is Michael Carter going to see? Like 10% of the reps next year? Like, Carter has definitely fallen from grace this year.
Yeah, I agree, because, last year he was really impressive, broke a lot of tackles. It seemed like he was, going to have a good future, but this season it hasn't built on it or even matched it. And it's kind of been, obviously now it's the same thing like with Barrios and his catches. Obviously now we're going to bring it more attention because there was a big mistake with the fumble, but it's more so just kind of shines more light on what's been developing for the whole season, because it just hasn't seemed like he's had the same juice in terms of breaking tackles, getting yardage after contact, and just creating things on his own. Because, you slide Knight in there in the same offense recently, and, he's been electric at just making things happen. So yeah, Knight is definitely the guy for the rest of this season until anything drastic changes. And it'll be interesting to see where it goes next year, because, Knight is really impressing. And then Carter, on the other hand, just has not been as good this year.
CD, what was reads like? Tell me Pitt White there. Was Barrios' first read or second read? I would be interested to see if you know that, because he didn't hit him too late. He hit him with good timing. That's a lot more on Barrios for not flattening out and not catching the ball. We're blaming White for putting a ball on his face, and we're saying it's too late. Like, the ball was on his face. Now the ball, and we were referencing the Vikings play, which was that third and goal or fourth? That was fourth and goal, right? That was the last play of the game.
Yeah.
That play, the ball was too far to the inside. I'm not blaming Mike White for that Barrios throw at the end of the game. Are we serious? Like, he wasn't late throwing it. His first read was inside. His second read was Barrios. So he has to look at his inside, then to his second. So you don't go outside to inside there. You go inside to outside on that one. So too late. I don't see that at all. Now the running backs past Michael Carter, Zonovan Knight, dude, he's been a revelation. He's not a superstar yet, but he won Rookie of the Week, obviously, because he's on the ballot, and Jets fans are fucking crazy. But with that being said, Zonovan Knight has broken a ridiculous amount of tackles. I think at least last week, coming into this week, he was like number 2 in the league. It was him and Josh Jacobs, I believe. Josh Jacobs was number 1, but he's breaking a lot of tackles, a lot of decisiveness. Does a really, really good job turning his legs. So he seems like he's going to be running back 2 next year for the Jets. And he looks like one of those like legitimate hits for a late round running back. Like, you always have whoever it is in the 5th, 6th, 7th round UDFA. And Zonovan Knight seems like he could, like, even as a start, like, and this is a large leap to take, only playing 2-3 weeks, but like, he looks like one of those guys on a different team who could be a starting running back for another team. We just fortunately have Bryce Hall on the team. So pairing him and Bryce, and hopefully a bounce back from Michael Carter, like, I'm very excited about the future of the running back group, and a large part of that obviously is because of Bryce Hall, but Zonovan Knight has been awesome these last couple of games as well.
No, he's been great, and it's just another reason, I think, to be optimistic about what the Jets can do over these final 4 games, because, what were your biggest questions coming out of that Broncos game and after that first Patriots game that you lose? It's, quarterback, and how are we going to replace what we lost in Bryce Hall? And quarterback's looking improved, and Zonovan Knight is not Bryce Hall, does not have the same upside or long speed, but definitely in terms of in comparison to what James Robinson and Michael Carter were doing, I think you're absolutely a lot closer to Bryce Hall now with Knight than you were before he broke out. So he's definitely brought back a little bit more explosiveness, juice, and just ability to kind of outperform the blocking and produce things on his own. So I think with these 2 guys in the backfield, it's definitely added a lot more reasons to be optimistic about the Jets versus if they didn't come in. And then now you're looking at these next 4 games with some of the production they had previously. So if the Jets are going to close out the season strong and make the playoffs, I think Mike White quite obviously, but Mike White and Zonovan Knight are going to be a very big reason why.
Yeah, and they save and like the whole Bam thing. I think the Jets thought he was healthier than he was. Maybe he hasn't looked as explosive, and I think that you're looking at another 200 yards from him in 4 weeks. Like, they're going to save that 5th round pick. It's going to be a 6th round pick. So I think your group next year is probably those 3 guys, and then Ty Johnson. I wouldn't imagine paying Robinson anything at this point as a 4th running back because of Zonovan Knight's emergence. Brian Newell, glad Nani's in the house because Joe was going to ask you about the gif of the guy. I'm assuming you meant throwing himself off a bridge. What was that about? It's because Nania put up a why can't the Jets wear black on green?
Green on black. I like the green on black. I think that could be good. Yeah, I know I'm in the minority. I don't. If you disagree, I totally hear you. It's up for interpretation. It's just fashion, but I am totally in on green on black.
Yeah, so it's green on black, not black on green. Yes, it would be. But I don't like green helmet, green jersey, black pants.
Am I able to share stuff in here? Maybe I could throw it up.
Yeah, I think you can. But no, I just wear green and white at this point. This game.
They are wearing green, so we'll see if it's all green or if it's
going to be green on white. It's going to be green on white. I can't imagine green on black. Unless I much rather have green on black than green on green. I hate anything with pickle pants. I can't do it. The green, I just do not like the green pants. But nonetheless, you can pull our Knight and Bryce too similar in run style. No, Knight's definitely more powerful than Bryce is. Bryce has home run speed that Knight does not have. But even if they're more similar, like that's fine.
Can you see that?
Yeah, that's there. Yeah,
I'm a fan of this.
I just and the only thing with this, and I know I don't want to get into uniform talk. This is like a CYJ type thing, but like the thing I don't like about it is don't the black pants have a green stripe on it?
That's true. Like this doesn't really show
the black
that
pants with the green stripe and the
yeah.
green with the white stripe. It just does not match to me.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I get that. This this pose didn't really show it off. Maybe I should have.
It's a biased picture. You're trying to paint a picture that's not truly
trying to
fair
steer it to my agenda.
Exactly. But so okay, we have to run through these pretty quickly because there's only about 18 minutes left in the show. Now receivers to me, Elijah Moore, obviously we want to see him involved more, even though we don't love what he pulled early in the season. We understand why he did. We at least understand the thinking of why he did it, but still not acceptable to me. But 6 receptions, 60 yards, ran some pretty good routes in this game. Mims was disappointing again. Barrios was disappointing from both special teams and actually catching the ball. Wilson toasted up White multiple times, Tre'Davious White multiple times. Sometimes he wasn't targeted. The one play where he runs wasn't an out route on the left side of the field where he's running vertical and then he uses a peek technique to look inside. And then you see when he looks inside, Trey White thinks, okay, the ball is coming. Trey White looks inside and completely cooks him to the outside. So hell of a job using a peek technique. I can pull that up. He had the slant where he won with a dead leg or a skip. He had another short stride or foot fire versus off coverage where he won on the inside. Like Garrett, I said on the review, I was like, Garrett Wilson, and I am always the guy, like my logic says, don't buy jerseys, buy jerseys of the Wayne Corbett's and all those guys. But then Garrett Wilson's dominating. I want to get a jersey. But Garrett Wilson, he is, what's the thing that kids are saying now? He is him. So he is him. I think he needs like 140 something yards to get 1,000 yards. He already broke Keyshawn's record. I'm predicting him to do that this week, he is a guy who is legitimately, at least, and it's early to say, second year slump can happen, I guess. But he is a guy who's looking like he's going to be a legitimate top 10, top 15 receiver, next year, the year after. And he's already a legitimate number 1 this year as well. And like, it's, I wonder what would happen if he didn't have Zach Wilson for some of those games, because you look at him under Flacco and White and look at his production. Obviously Zach Wilson, it drops a lot, but you're looking at a guy who could have easily had 12, 13, 1,400 yards if Zach Wilson was eliminated from the conversation. Like, and you maybe have the stats, but like with Zach Wilson now, what is he averaging per game? Like 70, 80 yards, something like crazy. Right. So
huge boost.
Yeah, but go ahead on anything you got on Garrett. I'll pull up the one play of him toasting.
Like it is
White.
interesting to think about where he could be numbers wise without the Zach Wilson games, because you're still saying even without Zach Wilson, you're talking about Joe Flacco and Mike White, and Mike White's been good, but more so the Flacco games. Like Flacco missed him a lot too, so he's been really good this year, and as good as the numbers are, it feels like it's well short of where he should be when you look at some of the plays he's been missed on. This was awesome. Just the anticipation too from White, but I mean Garrett Wilson in this game, you're going up against Tre'Davious White, who was a big boost for the Bills compared to the last game. And granted, White is coming back from a big injury, but just toasting him up, and he's done it against other good corners this year. So he's been fantastic, and I think going forward, you're looking at a regular 1,000-yard guy. He's probably going to get to it this year as a rookie, despite the bad quarterbacking prior to Mike White coming in. So
he's going to get it this game. He's going to get it this game.
He does have a good chance to get this game. Lions actually, I posted this earlier, they've given up the most yards to number 1 receivers this season. So 1,000-yard guy this year, and should do it routinely going forward.
Yeah, he's exciting. Like I said, that beating up Trey White's one of the better corners in the league. I'm not sure how he's been playing since he's been back from injury, but still, like he's very, very good. His explosion is ridiculous. His yak is ridiculous. We haven't really seen his contested catch come up a lot, but it's something that he did at Ohio State. So that'll pop up eventually once the Jets start going vertical more. Past that, tight ends, not much. They struggled in blocking this game. Again, I don't necessarily think they were put in the best situations. Like you have the Conklin play I've already discussed. You have the play where I forget exactly what it was. Obviously, you have Uzama who gives it up because he's like 10 seconds late off the line. But you have a play action with deep developing concepts with Uzama, not as like a chipper or an assist to a tackle. He was one-on-one with an edge rusher for a deeper developing concept on the blind side. Like I just don't love that concept either. So they weren't put in the best situations, but they were definitely not great in this game either. And then obviously you saw the one play with Uzama where you're asking Uzama to win a curl route. I don't know if I've ever seen him win a curl route, so he's not a great route runner. I like Uzama as a blocker, as a yak guy in the flat, like simple, more basic tight endy type things, if that's a word, where Conklin can actually run routes, but neither one of them were good in this game. Now, with that being said, I'll be transparent and say I didn't really focus on them too much this game, like a keen eye, but they popped up as negatives quite often in this game.
Yeah, I agree. They're definitely part of the blocking woes, and they could be used better, I think. Like more yak opportunities for Uzama would be good to see, because that's where he makes his impact as a receiver. He's not going to beat anyone as a route runner. That's not what he does. But if you get the ball in his hands with some momentum, or if you dial up a good screen for him, he does have good speed with the ball in his hands and has shown some ability to break tackles and run through people. So that's what he can do. And then we talked about Conklin earlier. It feels like he can be a more featured route runner than he has been, more so than just a safety blanket check down kind of guy. So it feels like they could get more out of these two guys, and especially with Barrios really struggling throughout this season and, more in the spotlight the last couple of games, it feels like they could distribute it better, maybe find ways to get the tight ends to be greater fixtures. Kind of like that Bears game, they were a big part of the success in that one. They both had, I think, 3 catches each and had some big catches. So maybe could see more of them and have them used better.
I just want to comment on this really quick. You can see Barrios was bracing himself for the hit. Even Romo said, Barrios going to get hit. Again, it's 3rd and 1 with the game on the line. You're going to have to make some tough catches sometimes. That's part of the being an NFL receiver. And also, CD, I think if Barrios wasn't the first read that's on the OC or still on White, needed 1 yard, not 2. Yes, but if Conklin, who was the first read, was open right off the jump, then it's Conklin on the inside. On double slant concepts like that, you're reading inside to out because there's more congestion in the middle. You read 1 to 2 to the outside. So every single concept is going to be read like that. So it's not on Lafleur, it's not on White. It didn't work out. Barrios needs to flatten, and Barrios, while knowing he needs to take is going to take a hit, he needs to extend to the ball. You can't just say, I'm going to take a hit, I'm not going to catch the ball. It's called alligator arming a ball. That's what people will criticize people in the draft for, not attacking balls and they're going to get hit. Sometimes you have to do it. It happens. It's unfortunate, but it's 3rd and 1 with the game on the line. You're not going, I don't want to take a hit. Yeah, it's going to happen. It sucks. But it's part of playing NFL receivers, and it's part of making $7-8 million a year. But every single concept is read inside out there. So you can't say it's on the floor. And I just criticize him plenty, but I'm not criticizing him for that play at all. Minus Barrios being the receiver in that position, that should have been Elijah Moore or Wilson. But in terms of the play after the ball was snapped, it was executed fine by White. It's just he ran the route too far past the sticks. But you're never going to go outside in on there. It's just not going to happen like that. So with that being said, offensive line, you just had Fant on this week too, but I think Fant was okay this game. I don't think he gave up a lot of pressure or anything like that, but he let the pocket get pinched on him a lot. Like he didn't necessarily hold his ground as well as I wanted him to. Brown up a few pressures. Lake and Tomlinson the inside, like even McGovern. He had a couple of really good plays this game, but they had a couple of plays where he wasn't so great. But I also don't think he was put in the best position. He had the really nice play where he got to the second level on the Zonovan night run. Overall, I'm like almost fast forwarding this and not necessarily paying attention to people as much as I should. But overall, in the offensive line, people who stood out, people who didn't. That's something that I know you track and you really look out for as well. So individually, offensive line, what'd you think?
Yeah, I think we mentioned the tight ends. I really think they were a big part of some of the blocking. I mean, especially that strip sack with Mike White. I mean, Uzama just not getting off the snap. That was a bad play. So I think tight ends were kind of a big part of that, should be mentioned. But O-line, I think, tackles maybe weren't the worst part of it. They weren't good, but I guess they were okay. I feel like it was more interior where a lot of the pressure came from. McGovern, like you said, if you're looking at it, it's like he's responsible for it. But some of them, like you said, they're just these crazy positions he was put in where it's just not the most ideal to where you're in an advantageous spot to win. Then I think Tomlinson had some misses. I don't think Herbig was very good in this game. Really the past couple, I feel like Herbig struggled a little bit more than he was previously. So I don't know. This was a team effort for the offensive line. I feel like it wasn't any specific guy kind of getting blown up. There were a lot of really well drawn up blitzes from Buffalo that were just causing problems for the Jets. They were not picked up correctly. So I think the blame could be spread pretty evenly across the board.
So this kind of ties into what we're talking about. You're the film junkie. Is Laken Tomlinson as bad as did you see Laken Tomlinson put up the Pro Bowl thing today? Like asking for people to vote.
Yeah,
Dude,
that's
and
what I'm
like
saying earlier. It's like there are some people I'll retweet, but I'm just not gonna do all
listen,
of them.
if I could cut Tomlinson and regain, I think he's making like $15 million, but they only save like 7. So you're basically paying $8 million or $7 million not to be on the team next year. And I know you could push it down the road, but in general, I don't think he's going to get cut because you're paying him almost as much to be off the team than on the team. So he's probably here next year, but like, let's say it was 11 million savings and 4 million dead. Like you're cutting Tomlinson. Tomlinson has been bad this year, and he's not as bad as he was early necessarily, but he's not been good at all. Defense, I kind of got to accelerate a little bit. We'll do the defensive front 7 and the back 7, I guess. Front 7, Quinn Williams was awesome until he went out. That bull jerk, push pull, whatever I call it. I call it bull jerk.
Yeah.
Really nice sack there. He had the draw play where he did a nice job recognizing it and then getting held and making the tackle. Rankins had a sack. That was more on JFM than it was Rankins. JFM really pushed the pocket there very, very nicely. Huff had the play where he walked him into a Quinn Williams sack as well, where Spencer Brown was let off the snap in general, and he did not give Bryce Huff the attention he deserves. So Bryce Huff had a pretty easy sack there, but really good job with the swinging rip on that play. Past that, JJ had the block punts. I thought the front 4 were pretty good. The back or the linebackers, I didn't really notice Quan a lot this game. Quincy had a hit or two. He had that really nice spear over the middle, which was nice. Mosley had one of his better games, minus encroachment on 4th and 1 jumping over the line. So like to me, that offsets everything well he did, because that's a mind-blowingly bad mistake by Mosley. So I would say mostly good from the front 7. Even though once Quinn went out, I know they gave up a lot more yards per play and things like that. And again, Mosley, great game, but when you have a great game and you offset it with a terrible penalty, it is what it is. Like you cannot jump there. It's not like the Bills were on our 40-yard line or near the 40-yard line. They were on their own 40-yard line with defensive, grinded out type of game in the sleet. Like they were never going to go for that. He jumps over the line. I lost my marbles. I'm like, oh, here it is. Here comes the touchdown off of this drive. You know that shit's going to happen right after it happened. And obviously Dawson Knox gets a touchdown. So what'd you think of the front 7?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you said. It'll be interesting to see if Quinnen doesn't play this week, how they rebound. I guess the one thing I'm curious to hear what you think about Carl Lawson. I mean, what do you think about how he's been playing recently, really on the season as a whole? Because I guess for me, I'd classify him as average or above average. I guess I would say above average, but not the guy that I think we saw in 2020 with the Bengals.
I think somebody put in the chat earlier, it might have been Kev Chad, I apologize if it wasn't Kev, but I don't know what the exact reference of it, but somebody mentioned in the chat. Lawson, to me, I said this on the film review, which is kind of good timing, Kev. I said it when I recorded it yesterday. Lawson will be better to me next year than this year, because people obviously take some time to recover from injuries like he had. But with that being said, and like I said earlier, he's an $8-9 million player making $15 million. So do you expect him to make that leap to being worth $15 million? I don't know. I think he's been decent to solid, like pushing the pocket. But he just doesn't have as much of a pass rush repertoire.
Right.
I remember
that's what I'm saying. Because I feel like when I watch him, I don't see a guy who's not explosive. It's just I feel like all he really does is bull rush and push the pocket. He doesn't get off blocks. There were reps in this game where he would push his man past the quarterback and just get stuck on it. Some of them may be held, like you're pointing out, but it's like he doesn't really have a way to beat tackles to where he can get off of it and pressure the quarterback, like you'll see Bryce Huff do on the other side. So kind of feels like he's just a pocket pusher, which he does well. But
he had like club
we saw
rips
more in 2020. Yeah,
he had club rips and arm overs and spin moves, and a couple of other things. I still probably have my notes on what I saw from him with the. Actually, I should pull that up. But with the Bengals, and this year it's just straight bull rushes. So he's been good, but he's not worth $15 million. And again, like in a vacuum, what I love to say, yes, Carl Lawson should be back here because he's a good player. Sure, I would love to say that, but is he worth $15 million? Is he worth that extra $5 or $6 million? I don't think he's earning this year. And would you rather fold that into paying Connor McGovern to come back? Like that's how you have to think about it. It's not just one for one. Oh, do you want him back? Sure, but you can't pay another guy in free agency or one of our own. So I don't think he's been great for the Jets. Now let's see if I have Lawson. I said rips, jerks, forks to clear himself. That's not the pass game. I probably I usually write down pass rush moves. I don't know why I didn't for him. But nonetheless, yeah, I haven't been overly impressed. Now the secondary, I'm sorry to again accelerate a little bit. Joyner, I can't think of much minus the play that he was going to get absolutely roasted by Diggs if he caught the ball. Whitehead made a good hit on that one play, but it was also because of Rankins. Talk about the defensive line again. Rankins noticed that there was listen, for Rankins, if you're in a situation where your head's up with an offensive lineman, that offensive lineman's pulling, and then another offensive lineman's coming to block down on you or block back, and the play is most likely going to that pulling side. He recognizes that, shows good explosion, makes the running back kind of bubble his track out a little bit, and then Whitehead cleans it up. But safety, I don't really notice too much. And then the corners were good this game. Sauce was solid. That play that I legitimately think people don't know what pass interference is, because that was not pass interference on Sauce. There were a few plays he got away with this year, to be completely transparent, but Sauce in general was good. And that play, he almost hurt himself because they were running what looked like quarters. And he notices an out cut from the number 2 and tries to jump it when clearly that was the safety's responsibility. So he almost tries to do too much, and that's why he was behind on the 1. So he almost hurt himself trying to be too good on that play. He has elite makeup speed, and he showed that, got the pass deflection. Reed was solid in this game. He had the nice blown up play to the run on a screen to a receiver late in the game. But there was one play late though that Josh Allen misses. Who did he miss? It might have been. I think it was a receiver, but late in the game, it looks like Reed blew a coverage again, and then Mosley had the pass deflection where he chopped down the receiver's arms, which I could show that. I could show that now, or I'll pull it up. But I think Reed was solid in this game as well. But he's been having a few busted coverages the last couple of weeks, because in the Vikings game too, he gets eaten up by the play action, and Hockenson gets behind him for what should be a massive game and it almost happened again this week. So.
Yeah, I mean, cornerbacks, I think were pretty good for the most part. I mean, except Michael Carter II, I think. And you talked about it in your post game. Rough game for him. I mean, right after I was kind of pumping him up this week, he has a rough game. But for the most part, I think he's been really good. But rough game this week.
That's the thing. Like, and this is the play where I think, and I go over it in the review why I think it's Reed, and I do think it's Reed here. You're not going to put Mosley in that situation, but luckily that the ball was behind Josh Allen was not great in this game. But Michael Carter II has been good. He's been getting targeted a decent amount on third down, and I would like to I would like to have the information. I probably won't go back and chart it, but a lot of the times he's getting beat on third down. It's a receiver who's motioning to the opposite side of the formation, and they snap the ball and they're beating to the inside. It's happened at least 3 or 4 times I can think about. So Carter's got to start playing that inside out instead of outside in, because it's been happening consistently and happening against Diggs this game as well. So not a great game for him. I think Eccles is hurt now too, and what's his name's coming back. But special teams, man, wasn't great this game. Zerline was 1 for 1 and then 1 for 1 extra points. So okay, kudos to him. Hopefully they re-sign him. Any other overarching thoughts before we give a quick, roundup of the Lions game and a score prediction?
No, I think we mostly hit on all of it.
Yeah, sorry to accelerate it. Just sometimes when you have work, it is what it is. But so Lions game, strong O-line versus D-line, who I am concerned with Quinnen Williams. I think their offensive line at that point may have the advantage, but you have Goff, who's 0-4 versus Saleh. You have Goff, who's not as good in the cold. So you have a team that's not as good on the road, with a quarterback who's not as good in cold weather versus a quarterback who has struggled versus our head coach in general. Obviously, he's a DC with the Niners when he beat him or wherever he was. So you have some factors there for the Jets. I think in terms of the Lions passing threats, the Jets can contain them. Obviously, losing Hockenson, I don't really know who their other tight end is or how he's been playing, but I think our defense can match up pretty well with him. I'm just worried about the defensive line versus the offensive line. And in terms of their defense, they have Hutchinson. They have what's the defensive lineman's name? They got from the Brockers. I don't know how he's been playing as of recent, but he was good with the Rams. I'm not sure if he's still good. Past that though, who is they have Okudah, but they don't really have a lot in their defense. And I think they're 31st in the league in terms of DVOA on their defense, or 30th. So they're a bad defense. And I think their offense has talent, but again, you have a good offensive line, but a quarterback who I don't think he's terrible, but he's nothing to write home about, especially on the road and in the cold. So I think it's a game that the Lions are hot right now, and the Jets have been a little bit of a downtrend, but people are projecting the Jets to lose, and I think Vegas has it as like minus or +1 Jets. So like it'd be like minus or +4 on the road in Detroit. I would be much more nervous if we were in Detroit, to be completely honest, with how they play in domes versus outside on the road. I'm going to predict, and I don't know if you want to give your prediction now. I don't know if you do that on your show or whatever, but I'm going to say 27. I want to say 20. I want to say 17. Fuck it, because of just of Goff being on the road. So 27-17. Jets take the victory. Move to 8-6. Nania, a quick wrap up and then a prediction if you could.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Quinn Williams is big. Let's keep an eye on that, quite obviously. But even if he doesn't play, I think the Jets, this is a game they should win if the offense plays up to what it should be able to do against this defense on the road. But I agree with you. I think the Jets are going to win this. I'm going to go a little higher scoring. I'm going to say Jets 30, Lions 24. I'll go with that.
30. Yeah. Well, listen, hopefully they can convert in the red zone if that is the case. Because they're not going to win. Like you can't get to 3rd and short and in the red zone and not convert in those situations, at least to a relative success, because the Jets have been brutal in both categories, and you can move the ball 20-20 all you want. You don't score there in the red zone, get field goals instead of touchdowns. That's how you lose games. It's some nice to see Ben Bustin toughen up and not take two shit. I don't know if you're talking about actual Ben or you're talking about Kyle or Michael Nania is now Kyle or whatever, and I'm now Ben. I don't know what's going on there, but
I'm confused about the lore.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody for listening, and